Ready? Alright, I started it. Well, hello everyone. I'm Mr. Walky, and that's Mr. Talky, and we also have
BlueStar Saber.
and yeah. And today we're talking about
Kaguya.
Yes.
What about Kaguya?
Well, I think she was a very last-minute addition to the story.
So obviously we're here to talk about Kaguya, and we already get the context, but I guess just for the audience who are gonna be like tuning in for the first time, Craig, what are your thoughts on Kaguya before we really get into it?
Should never have existed.
Yeah,
Yeah, and for me, it's like I gave her a chance, but then she got taken out quite quickly, and then all the stuff with Boruto came along. And hold on, I gotta close my windows. Oh, damn it.
My biggest problem with her, I think she was a last-minute addition to, she was clearly a last-minute addition because they came up with Boruto, like, what, a year before the series ended, and I think Kaguya was created as, like, an attempt to tie in with the series Boruto, so Boruto would have villains.
Yeah, I gave her a chance, and then like the ending happened in the Boruto announcement, and then it's like my opinions became entirely negative, and it's like you just created this character for a spin-off, really. So that's like the way I've been. And for those who have context, in Uda and Kamui's Discord, if you will, I have emphasized that point, even getting into an argument with someone who they both know, but I'm not going to name him publicly, just because. But I got it like it could lead to some very really long, ritzy discussions, and as a result, Uda and Kamui, I think, if you might remember some podcasts ago, talked interest with me about doing a Kaguya stream. And when I was up for it, I wanted at least either Greg or Lucky Rave here with me, because I figured like it'd be a bit. This sort of feel like it might be a bit more balanced instead of just like two hosts and one guest. But now we have like two guests and two hosts, so
yeah.
At the very least, granted, Lucky unfortunately has been a bit busy for the last few months, so. And it's still busy now. I think he's gone on a cruise ship, from what I can tell. But
Oh, nice.
But
Yeah.
the biggest issue is just finding the time for all four of us to be ready. And after so long, we're now ready to like discuss Kaguya.
Yeah. So, first things first, I want to say thank you, Space, for sending us 200 joules for flow state, whatever that means. I don't know what you did or how you did it, but you did. You sent us 200 joules, whatever that means. So, thanks for whatever that is, probably, I think.
Wait, what are you talking about?
On YouTube, he donated 200 joules for flow state.
I don't know, maybe that's some sort of income or something.
I don't know. I've never seen that before.
Well, what the hell does that mean?
I don't.
I can't even, as a audience member, I can't see the 200 joules. It
Oh,
just
that's
shows me
weird.
said flow state.
That's hilarious too.
See,
So
but
you
yeah,
know,
Space.
like only you get to know that it costs 200 joules.
No,
the
sorry,
very
Space. I'm
least,
doxing your joule count.
Yeah, he said all we get is he sent a flow state, but he's also commented, looks like we're finally covering this, yeah.
Yes, yes.
Arguably, the Fourth Great Ninja War, I'd say, is probably the most controversial aspect of Naruto. Some would argue it was the decline, and arguably the Kaguya twist is what I'd argue one of the top 5 reasons I'd say people sort of hate the war arc. Or the war saga, depending on how you want to debate it.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely controversial, and I think that in a way both sides are justified. So I did want to touch on it from both sides because in a way both sides are right. But I want to do like that nuance, just to have like a more in-depth discussion on Kaguya, the complexity of her character, her role in the story, etc., etc. So I guess to start off, I wanted to say. So if you guys have been paying attention to Blue Vortex at all, or like any of like external media or whatever, the Boruto editors, the guys who I can't trust as far as I would throw them, but I will say they did recently have an interview saying something along the lines of the Boruto movie was planned. I think it was Boruto movie or Boruto manga, Boruto series. Something along the lines of Boruto was planned ever since like 2013, I believe they said, which is during 2013 is I believe when they were doing the stuff with like Obito, maybe like Tails Obito getting around there in the timeline of the weekly
Yeah,
manga.
that was when Team 7 reunited, and let's see, you had the battle against Obito, and which lasted majority, like I think 2 volumes worth, by the way, I believe. And then you started Madara having his rampage, and the last chapter of that year was Naruto getting the Nine Tails extracted from him.
Yeah, okay, that's cool because in the anime, it's also at the very end of the year. They leave us off that for Christmas, and then we have like a break. So it's like we got Naruto dying for Christmas.
Yeah,
Which was funny.
yeah, it's like that's kind of messed up when you think looking back.
It's cool that both the anime and the manga got that timeline right with that. That's hilarious. Oh, shout out the Madara fans.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that'd probably be because Naruto ended in 2015. So if we're looking at 2013, that's probably like chapter 600 or 2014. Okay, yeah, then
700.
Yeah.
So 2014 and 700 chapters.
The like Team 7 team ups probably in that like 6 if that's where like it was supposed to be the Team 7 team up timelines beginning of 2013 where that interview is, and that's gonna be like chapter 630 something, because 639 I think is when Obito becomes the Tento's Jinchuriki. But like in the 620s is when Sasuke's talking to the Edo Kage. So you've got that like early 630s would probably be.
I believe it was 631 because I remember that chapter because that had the "Are you his girlfriend?" moment, which I talked to like Oodie about, and I mentioned like the whole Naosaku top 10 moments podcast stream I did back for Naosaku Day on April 3rd. If you might remember.
I'm not sure if this is what you had planned, Oodie, but I did tag you in this because this one of our really, really old. It's actually something from Blind Go, apparently, but spinning off of that, one of the really, really old topics does relate here, and there's 2 different ways we can approach it. But basically, the question, because the sentiment that's being expressed is that she's last minute. So the question would be, well, there's gonna be a few questions. They're all related. So what counts as quote unquote last minute? What is enough foreshadowing, and how long does she need to be around for? Now, the 2 ways that we can approach this, depending on what your answers would be, is from the complete hindsight perspective of you can introduce Kaguya at what? You can introduce her at chapter 20 if you want. The other is let's assume Kaguya was never thought of until the Boruto movie, and that's when they came up with it. So 631 is the earliest. From then on, how would you approach it? So there's like 2 different ways you can kind of like answer that, but we'll start with, let's try to be specific. What counts as last minute? And don't just say Kaguya. Like, try to be a little more like, all right, they're weekly chapters. They need X amount of chapters before they're introduced. Like, you get what I'm trying to say. What's enough? And what's last minute?
I'd feel if you're introducing a character near the end of the story, which at best maybe we didn't really know much about, but like at least like say the last, I suppose for like I guess let's see, for Naruto was the last 50 chapters when Kaguya was mentioned, just like which is arguably the last 1/14 of Naruto. I feel like that was like arguably too late of an introduction. I think it's when just when you're just in like the climax of the series, and suddenly you're learning about this new character which we've heard nothing about, and not at the beginning of the arc, towards the end, the climax of the arc. I'd say that is too late. I mean, if Kaguya was at the beginning of the arc and you were building up to her, I'd say it's even though you could argue still kind of last, last minute addition at the very least. You know, it felt like it was building up to her, but no, because from what the war was, it was the final battle of the Akatsuki, where Madara and Kabuto had made this alliance, resurrecting all these ancient Edo Tensei ninjas. Let's see, if many of them being past characters that we knew who had died throughout the series or had died in history, or at least we somewhat knew about, like, say, the Jinchuriki and the Kages. That was like the antagonist we built up, and let's see, that was what the conflict was set to be. Kaguya was just mentioned once or twice towards the end, and then bam, she's now the final villain. Oh, she's been indirectly behind everything. That's, I feel like, last minute. And if I had to say another last minute thing, let's see, to compare, I'd say just introducing this villain when he's not being brought up at all throughout the rest of the story. For example, in the sequel trilogy, throughout, let's see, the first two films, like The Force Awakens, Last Jedi, it was Kylo Ren and Snoke. They were like the villains of it. Palpatine wasn't mentioned at all, and suddenly Palpatine is now the big bad behind everything in The Rise of Skywalker. And the first hint that we got about this was like from a Fortnite promotion, which is kind of ridiculous.
That is funny. Oh, that's interesting. Greg, what's your answer for this question?
What was okay? Repeat the question.
Well, I guess. Go ahead.
Oh, well, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna let you go. It's your question.
I have to say, so like, if you try to be a little more specific, whether it's through numbers of chapters or examples of comparison, just what counts as last minute, and on the other side, like, what's enough build up before they're like formally?
I think really with a lot of stuff, it's like how Madara's name was dropped. I think hundreds of chapters before he showed up. Like Rose Kaguya, she was name dropped. I think like a month or two before she showed up.
Okay.
So I have do you have more to say real quick?
Well, like, when was Madara first teased? He was first teased, hundreds of chapters before he actually showed up.
Yeah, it depends if you want to be direct, because I guess his technical earliest would just be the stone statues of him in the Final Valley, but we don't even know that's Madara, so I personally wouldn't count that, and I would instead count when Kurama says his name in the Tenchi Bridge arc.
Technically, Kamui, I will add, we don't know that's Madara, but we do know Kakashi says that those are the two founders of the Hidden Leaf, and they fought long ago, and etc., etc. So we don't know that's Madara, but we know at least that lore about that character that looks like that.
Yeah, it's almost like, yeah, it's true. I mean, you can count it if you want. I almost feel like it's more of technically is a lore of Madara, so yeah, I mean, I could go 50-50 on whether you count it or not.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's arguably foreshadowing, but you don't quite understand the context until, say, like,
yeah.
Exactly.
The Itachi Pursuit arc.
Well, but then if we're doing that, then if that's like a 50-50, then I think the 50-50 would also apply to Kimimaro. Not only in appearance and his like arsenal in terms of his bones, which is similar to Kaguya's bone ash, but also his last name is literally Kaguya, so technically a Kaguya name drop, even if it's like a different clan, quote unquote. But like it's like Kishimoto obviously has the idea.
Because the only difference there is that realistically, like, if you were in a debate, you can make that argument, but realistically, that's more like it's retroactive foreshadowing to where Kishimoto is actually calling back to Kimimaro more than
I don't disagree, but you could say it is the earliest possible example of Kaguya foreshadowing. Yeah. It's at the very least possible, even if it's unlikely. I will add all of that, though.
Example,
oh, God.
You might call this a stretch, but like, if you're going to call the Madara statue, even though we don't know it's Madara, you could argue then that the Ten Tails, who we just don't know it's Kaguya, that so when that's first mentioned, that's the Kaguya beginning of foreshadowing.
Yeah. I mean, it's also, I do think in terms of writing format, Kishimoto's doing the exact same thing with Shippuden in part 1. Right before the final fight of Naruto vs. Sasuke at the Valley of the End, they're fighting this great, like, unparalleled threat that they can't possibly defeat because of their overwhelming, unimaginable strength. Basically, an Otsutsuki who's using bones and etc. etc. Like, it's kind of like the same idea of the white-haired character that's coming and swooping in out of nowhere as a plot twist, basically.
Well, to be honest, Naruto is the only one that actually fought this guy, to be honest. Sasuke was basically leaving the village at the time, but I'd say my response to, like, first to the Kimimura's clan, the Kaguya clan, I feel like that feels more like just Kishima's trying to find, okay, how can I connect this more with the Naruto world? It's like, oh, this is like I can just use Kiyomaru's clan name as like as a sort of like loose connection, really.
Well, to be fair, so I agree it is retroactive foreshadowing to connect those two characters, the existence of Kaguya herself. I don't think it's directly foreshadowed there. But I do think the name Kaguya and Kimimaru's last name, I don't think that's coincidence. I don't think he just chose that name out of a hat. I think he is referencing the like Buddha, Hindu, whatever god that was in real life to Kaguya.
Definitely based on the Kaguya Hime folklore. The question is that what Kimimaru's last name's in reference to?
I think it definitely is. Meaning? I think it definitely is. Well, it's definitely not a reference to like a rabbit goddess or whatever. I think it's in reference to the Kaguya thing from like the lore Hindu, whatever Buddhist, not whatever that is. I'm curious
to look into that just to see how it would connect, because
sure, but to be fair, I mean, Amaterasu in the real life lore religion stuff isn't black flames. It's just like the name. Same with Tsukiyomi. It's not Genjutsu in real life or whatever.
The name. Sometimes there's like a little bit like hot as the sun goddess, like this.
So I'm not gonna say he had Kaguya as a character planned out, but he had Kaguya, the concept of like the Kaguya goddess or whatever planned, or not planned, but at least he wanted to do that in the story, since he did do that, and then he did it again later with actual Kaguya.
I think I wouldn't really agree with that necessarily. I think it's just the name he thought that would work with like Kimimaru's clan, I think. But I feel like
But I feel like he's choosing the name for a reason.
Yeah, I'd say this. I think if perhaps the Kaguya clan was like, there's some Naruto lore that was named there saying this clan was named after this war goddess or something, you know, sort of like even if it's just like a one-time reference to something like that, I could argue that it was foreshadowing Kaguya. But since that wasn't really brought up with the clan, all we knew is that they were a bunch of violent war savages who didn't really like peace.
Well, that's the thing, because that in and of itself would be the more direct thing. Everything else is indirect. What you're describing right now is more direct. The Kaguya clan is a bunch of savages and brutes, just like the Otsutsuki. Also, the Kaguya clan, Kimimaru's body has traces back to unknown origins. That's why he's dying. That's why Kabuto can't figure out his body for his medical records or find some cure to whatever sickness is killing him from seemingly the clan. So you could argue that would be some direct, if not foreshadowing, then at least loose ties that there is more going on with Kimimaru, which does get to Kaguya. Or at least it gets to something he plans down the line.
Well, you say that, but Kishimaru had an opportunity to maybe foreshadow this with Kimimaru in the early days of the war arc, if you will, because he brought him back as an Eno Tensei and did nothing with him.
Yeah, I mean, by that point... I was
going to bring that up to where... I mean, if I was going to rewrite it with the Kimimaru specific way, I would absolutely... I honestly... You could do like a small line of like, you know, this clan of savages, like they've been this way ever since the Great War of a millennia ago. Like, you know, they can make some like, reference like that. But I think the bigger thing would be... I mean, you ask me and Oodie... We're going to rewrite Edo Kimimaru 50,000 different ways, because of course we are. He's our favorite character. And they didn't do anything with him, weirdly enough.
I thought he was going to like fight Rock Lee, and so just Rock Lee would be able to beat at least one opponent he lost to or something.
Or I mean, even then, like, you know, because just as a quick example, because like when Kabuto's talking about like Madara and Hashirama and the legendary power and the myths and legends of the Sage of Six Paths and all that kind of jazz, you could very easily have done a similar concept to where, you know, Kabuto doesn't have the answer of Kaguya, that Otsutsuki who ate the chakra fruit who came from outer space. He doesn't have that answer, obviously.
Oh.
But it could be a similar thing to where Kimimaro, I mean, he's literally doing this anyway, being unbeatable, and Kabuto could be like narrating Kimimaro's unbeatableness.
Because it's described he's omnipotent, he's like a god, unstoppable, no one can beat him. It's like basically
battle abilities, he's the best agility and dexterity of all time. He's the strongest vessel Orochimaru ever wanted, which includes EMS Sasuke and Itachi from the Akatsuki.
Because, like, to what extent can we say this is all a coincidence with all of this? So I'm not saying that he had Kaguya as a character planned out necessarily specifically, but I do think it's going to be similar to Zetsu, who he admitted he was writing week to week. He didn't know where Zetsu's character was going, but he knew that he was writing things in, knowing that later he was going to come back to it when he figured more stuff out later. So I think the same could be said for Kimimaro, that he's dropping seeds now that he knows are going to be planted later on. He doesn't know how those seeds are going to plan out, so he doesn't have Kaguya in mind, but he has something in mind that became Kaguya from all the way back.
Well, I think that's the thing. He put seeds in, like saying I might come back to this, and then sometimes he never does.
That as well, yeah.
Yeah, because Daigonai has a whole series of videos on that, but
oh yeah.
Real quick about the rewrite thing, you could just have Kabuto just narrating like Kimimaru's unknown origins and how he found out that it ties back to this clan from a millennia ago in the war and all these like crazy, like basically you can have Kabuto narrate some interesting, ninja history in relation to the Kaguya clan, which could then be used later through Madara's story and then later the Hagoromo's story and then Kaguya's introduction.
Yeah, but like we said, you didn't really do that, so yeah.
But yeah, no, that's not me defending Kaguya. That's just me saying that would be even cooler.
Okay. Yeah, I would also like to point out to everyone who's listening, Daigo Knight is arguably, for Oodie and Kamui, the only other person in there that hates, let's say, that absolutely hates her as much as me and Greg.
Yeah.
I think he hates her more than you guys.
I think so.
I never heard you guys say she's not canon.
Yeah. I'm not. I'll say this: in some concepts of Kaguya, I'm not against. It's just too late for it, and I'm too suspicious with like what happened with the ending and afterwards. So
yeah. So, for a couple of the things that you guys said earlier, so. I wrote, there's no particular order that needs to be done, although I think one of these should probably be done last. So I wrote like kind of 3 questions. Oodie, if you want to go to the bottom of
is that in relation to this topic? Because I did have more to say on this.
Not in terms of Kimimaro, no.
Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine. Not in terms of Kimimaro, but in terms of like the writing last minute thing.
Yes. So, so the first question we should address, because one of the things you mentioned was like, when in the arc they're introduced. Well, actually, okay. First, I'll ask this question. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. I'm not equating these to being the same, but I'm gonna let you guys make your own distinction of what's different. Is it bad that Suigetsu, Kara, and Jugo, Team Heavy, they're just introduced when they're introduced? No foreshadowing, no build-up. They just appear when they appear. Is that?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, arguably, you could say we had no idea that Orochimaru had other like prisoners or / subordinates besides the Sound.
Well, I do think that
and like let's see, Kabuto's squad and also that Geni team. But at the very least, I'd say the biggest one thing about, even if they were sort of introduced, they were introduced in sort of like the 4th arc in part 2, and granted we have no idea how long Naruto was going to last that time, but arguably the ending wasn't going to happen anytime soon, if you will. But these characters were introduced at the beginning of an arc after Sasuke had seemingly killed Orochimaru, or absorbed him, however you want to describe it, if you will. And then he decided to go and recruit a squad to help him hunt down his brother. Now, whether or not, let's see, you can argue Kishimoto used Taka well within that arc, but at the very least, they're introduced in this arc. You got an idea of the gist of each of the members. Suigetsu was from the Blood Mist. He apparently was training to become a swordsman, and he's described as the second coming of Zabuza. Jugo is apparently the source of Orochimaru's curse mark. And apparently he's so strong that only Kimimaru could restrain him. And Karin, well, we didn't really learn about her Uzumaki stuff until the war.
Yeah,
really.
I think that was Kishimoto just decided that like spur of the moment thing.
So no, arguably I wish that was introduced sooner, but Karin at the very least, interestingly, was a girl that were introduced at seemingly like Sasuke, but also seems to be a bit more open about it than others, but also at the same time more willing to criticize Sasuke than say other girls that came before her. I mean, but at the very least, we got introduced to these characters. It was the beginning of an arc, and it wasn't say like the final arc of the series, if you will. So
you said a key thing that I was. You said a key thing I was waiting for, and I do have a follow-up question that's similar, but going to be a different character. But if you wanted to say anything,
I have my
that.
own 2 cents. So yeah, so I'm assuming you chose these 3 random specific characters just out like you pulled some names out of a hat. It didn't really matter.
I was trying to think of people who were this zero build up, like they are.
Sure.
You don't
yeah.
get their name until you see them, type of characters.
Yeah, the point is that they're obscure.
Here's what I remember reading about. Like a friend told me, like apparently somebody asked Kishimoto, "What do you have planned for those 3 characters?" And Kishimoto said, "Well, to be honest, the only reason they exist is because my editor felt Sasuke should have a team."
That's ridiculous.
It's interesting because despite that, I do feel like Taka has a very good thematic counterpart to Team Yamato because, okay, Naruto and Sasuke, the 2 parallels here with the respective. Sakura and Karin, of course, the medics who support, let's see, like the main male member of the teammate. Sai and Sugetsu both come from a background where, let's see, you come from a village where your organization that one of the trials is to kill your best friend or the person you're close to like graduate. And Yamato and Jugo were both former experiments of Orochimaru, if you will. In many ways, it's like Kishimoto had the groundwork to make some very interesting dynamics with these 2 respective teams, but never really used that potential, if you will.
That's fascinating. I never even considered that parallel. Wow, that's cool. So Kamui, I do think there's an obviousness here of saying that the criticisms for Kaguya don't necessarily apply to every character of all time, which is kind of the point.
I agree.
So yeah, well, I'm getting to a point here because obviously, well, first of all, I don't think that I don't think that most people are saying Team Taka are the best written characters in the whole franchise. You know, those 3 characters in particular stand above and beyond everyone else in the whole world. I don't think anyone's saying, besides the random people that have like Suigetsu like me as their favorite character, or some people have Jugo as their favorite character. I'm sure someone out there Karin's their favorite character. Like, I don't think anyone has like all 3 of them as like the tried and true peak above God itself. But like, that's besides the point. So obviously, so if the argument applies specifically to Kaguya, then what about Kaguya would make it, rather than applying it to every character, would be the question.
No, I think, yeah, exactly. So
BlueStar said a couple things.
There's a reason for asking the different questions that we're asking.
Yes. Yeah. So BlueStar said a couple things. For example, one of the things he said is the discrepancy of being introduced in the last arc versus any other arc would make a difference.
Yes, or when in the arc. So that's why my next example is going to be a little bit closer. So my question is, we mentioned him already, Kimimaru. Do you know how to give super in-depth thoughts? Just like him, dislike him. Like, that's all I really need. Or did I love him, best person of all time? But do you guys, do you like Kimimaru, or do you have a problem with him?
Kimimaru, I thought, was a pretty good one-off villain. Let's see, this secret additional 5th member of the Sound 4, we didn't realize, I guess, existed until midway the arc, and it was like one last obstacle to like preventing like the Kahona squad from taking, from getting Sasuke, because they managed to get Sasuke's bow thing off the 2 remaining Sound 4. And arguably, they could have actually, at this point, they could have actually succeeded if they managed to retreat away. But Kimimaru arrived, prevented that from happening, and Sasuke awoken from his thing and then left off, and then Naruto had to chase. But if Kimimaro was like an obstacle from Naruto at first until Lee arrived, and then would have killed Lee if not for Gaara's arrival. So he was like arguably the strong force. But I would say one thing: he wasn't like the final antagonist for like the Sasuke retrieval arc. I mean, it wasn't like the final fight. That was, of course, Naruto and Sasuke's battle at the very least.
He's the final villain, whereas Sasuke is the final antagonist. But that also applies to the war arc as well. Kaguya is the final villain, but Sasuke is the final antagonist. So, like, there's actually a lot of reasons why this is going to line up. That's not the only one.
But it's interesting because everything BlueStar just said about Kimimaro, describing him, that it's cool that he's like the secret fifth member that came in the middle of the arc, out of nowhere. Everything there applies to Kaguya.
Exactly. And so to give you more one-to-ones. Actually, I'll let you go and then Greg answer first.
Yeah.
But I'd say the difference is that Kimimaro, while yes, is additionally last minute, and yes, you could argue compare with part 1 and part 2, but the biggest problem is part 1 isn't really the end of the series. This is just an additional villain, and also Kimimaro still exists in Orochimaru's structure, if you will, of the sound villains, and he's connected to Orochimaru. Kaguya, it's just this
connected to the Ten Tails.
No. Kaguya was like, well, the Ten Tails. She had no connect, but okay. Arguably, yes, there's some forced connection with the Ten Tails, but
it's basically this is silly, but it's basically if like it's revealed that Kimimaro and Orochimaru were the same person all along, which I know sounds ridiculous for some other reasons, but it's kind of like that. It's just like that's actually Orochimaru, or really Orochimaru all those previous times was actually Kimimaro, like however you want to think about it.
Okay, but Kaguya had nothing to do with, like, say, the organization that we've been fighting, the Akatsuki and all that stuff. She had no connection to them whatsoever. At least with Kimimaro, he was like, we know that he came from Orochimaru at the very least.
Now, I will say, Kimimaro obviously had a couple scenes leading up to the Sasuke retrieval arc in part 1. Like, he's in Konohagarashi, he's in shooting exams, etc., etc.
No, he's not. He's not in Konohagarashi.
You get the idea. It's like the flashbacks to him or whatever. But there's a couple scenes of Kimimaro beforehand.
We'll get back to that later, but...
I don't know. What do you make of it, Greg, with, like, these questions?
Well, Kimimaro, I think, it's been a little while since I've read that, so my memory's a little fuzzy.
Mm-hmm.
Who did he fight at the end of part 1? I think was it Rock Lee, I think?
Naruto, Lee, and Gaara.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Like I said, I do think that Kishi was putting like things about, character bits, like, I don't know if it was planned to be like a any kind of hint that there was a Kaguya or anything like that, but I think it was just a big coincidence.
That's a separate thing. So really what I'm getting at here is that with Kimimaro, it's a similar structure. He's just name dropped by Kidomaru. Nobody knows who Kimimaro is when Kidomaru says what he says. He just says his name. There's no picture of him to point to. And then he's introduced later in the arc. Now, of course, a key difference you could say, which I'll say, what Kimimaro is a better character. He gets his whole introspective hospital bed moment with Kabuto before he engages in the action where he shows up to take Sasuke's coffin, whereas Kaguya would be like skipping to her showing up to take Sasuke's coffin. That is a key difference, but the point there would be
Kaguya still has her like legend revealed first, but that's not really about Kaguya. It's about the origins of chakra, which just has Kaguya.
Except but my point is that it's her name's mentioned. Kidomaru's one-off thing isn't about Kimimaro. He's just saying it's about Nechi, just saying, this hasn't happened since this unknown guy named Kimimaro.
Okay, yeah.
It's not really about Kimimaro. So the point, their names just mentioned, and then they are introduced. And if you want to, again, I'm not going to say this is as good, but for Kaguya, before the action really kicks in, she's got her whole like, oh, is this my nursery? Let's fight somewhere else. And then her crying and her backstory before the fight really kicks off. So you could say that's the same as Kimimaru's hospital bed scene. Even though, like, I think Kimimaru's hospital bed scene's better, but that's besides the point.
I'd say, see, the bed scene allows you to get an idea of who Kimimaru is, this devoted follower that wanted to become Orochimaru's host but couldn't due to his illness. And now he's determined to get the next host for Orochimaru, if you will. And even when you see him do it throughout the fight, we still see this devotion of his, and you can see when he like gets really angry when Gaara just calls him a puppet that Orochimaru doesn't really care about, and he gets enraged and all that stuff because his devotion is like that of a zealot, basically. So we arguably get a lot more of Kimimaru's personality than we ever do of Kaguya's, to be honest.
I would agree that his is better, but at the same time, you could still say you get a lot of Kaguya stuff in similar ways to where you got her crying. She hates her children. But she also loves them, and she wants the chakra. She's obsessed. Blah blah blah. Like, one's more compelling to me personally, but it doesn't mean that they both don't have it.
So, by the way, I think I just want to bring up some comments that have been Betsy in the chat, where I think politically by Blood Video Company, which is one of Greg's Discord users, says that there's a lot more established reasons to Kimimaru makes sense, such as we know Orochimaru had tons of cronies, so him having one more crony isn't a massive change in the law.
So that right there, that is another aspect that is a difference. We don't know about the Otsutsuki clan. They're not connected to anything. They're a new concept, as opposed to Kimimaru, who's coming from Orochimaru, who we already know. Not just that Orochimaru has lackeys or whatever, but the Orochimaru organization as a concept. We've known Orochimaru for like throughout all of Part 1, so it's not randomly introduced out of nowhere in that way.
Yeah, and I think RXNV01 says, like, the plot... saying, but sure, Kimimaru is the plot breaker. He's just one more Orochimaru crony, and says, like, the plot already justifies itself here. We know Orochimaru and Kabuto are monitoring the circumstances. We know they have more cronies, so them sending one more is justified. So, arguably, that is also another sort of, like, reason. It's because, arguably, Orochimaru, while yes, the Sound Village isn't a proper village, we do know he has a bunch of followers. The Sound 4 or 5 are arguably his top ones, but let's see. That doesn't mean he doesn't have other subordinates that he could end up using, and arguably perhaps Orochimaru's village should have been more brought up with its structure and organizations. Probably, especially if we're going to add Taka later, but it's not out of the vacuum at the very least.
Yeah.
It's not like this blank split. The Otsutsuki law, we all know, I think you mentioned from like those two Boruto editors confirmed that all this stuff came up in 2013, so it's like, and we can see that after like and we can see like you only had like the one mention of Kaguya in 2013 when like Madara talked about like when the tree was coming up with Obito starting to use Infinite Tsukuyomi or trying to, and then only mentioned again when the Sage of Six Paths was talking with Naruto. And then it's like, okay, he suddenly has this brother that we've never heard about, and it's like, what?
So technically,
oh, go ahead,
Madara would be too relevant to anything Kaguya, really.
I will say, technically, if we're going to count Madara's statue at the final valley as Madara foreshadowing, then I think you could apply the same argument to the Tin Tails introduced in the 5 Kage Summit being Kaguya foreshadowing. You did say that? Well, okay, but if that's the case, then I think you could also extend that. This is where you guys are going to think this is rage bait. If we're going to extend that to Madara's statue being foreshadowing, then you can apply that same to Kimimaru. If that's the case, Kaguya was foreshadowed longer than Madara.
What do you think about that, Greg?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I think it depends on whether you're gonna be like, because like obviously Madara's name and his past that gets more specific to Madara, whereas the statue you just don't, you can't really say who that is.
So, like, to some extent, yeah, you can make the same argument.
I mean, obviously it's not the same because the statue is literally Madara, whereas Kimimaro and the Ten Tails are not literally Kaguya. But
it's literally Kaguya's name.
Yeah.
If anything, we didn't really know. If anything, we didn't know that Kaguya was the 10,000 until after the twist, and Black Zetsu revealed, "Oh no, Kaguya turned into the 10,000." Let's see. Oh, the things we knew about the 10,000 beforehand was it was a monster that ravaged the world. The Sage of Six Paths stopped it, and made himself the Jinchuriki of it, and then split it into the 9-tailed beasts. Yes, you could argue we got a bit that little lore of Kaguya eating the chakra fruit, and then that made the tree turn into the 10 tails, but that was information later that we learned, but later than rather than at the beginning. So it's like this is just more of like Kishimoto slowly trying to tie in the 10 tails and Kaguya to try and make it make more sense, if you will, even though most fans didn't really like that drop.
Space also mentions the God Tree talking to Madara, and that's right before Madara absorbs it. To be fair, that's very close to the Kaguya reveal anyways, but I do think that certain B's comment, Black Zetsu's twist was foreshadowed in the Hashirama/Madara fight. I think that's at the very end, when after Hashirama stabs Madara, he senses Black Zetsu but doesn't see him. So you could argue that. But at the same time, if we're going to argue that, then you could argue Black Zetsu was foreshadowed as having something more interesting going on at the end of part 1, where he was watching the Naruto vs. Sasuke fight in that same way.
So that gets into what I think should be the last point of my 3 points. Before getting to that, I did want to ask, because this is a perspective type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So the war arc is obviously like ridiculously long, and some people consider it one arc. Some people consider it like 3 separate arcs. When you talk about like, oh, it's at the end of the arc, at the beginning of the arc, and so on, how are you viewing the war? Because that obviously would change. Your answer would change based on how long.
Well, I feel the war arc as one big, massive arc because, it's basically this one big global war. The only time I could generally separate it if it was like day 1 and day 2, just because day 1 is like the Allied forces gathering together. You see them going out, scattering, and having all these different battlefields. Then Naruto, midway through that, learns that the war is going on. He gets out. Madara, or Toby, if you will, makes his move with the Gedo statue. Nighttime falls, and you've got like let's see, the Akatsuki making their move with the white Zetsus, infiltrating the ranks, and the only way to stop them is with like Naruto's emotion sensing. But you have the climax of of that day with Naruto and Bia fighting the Raikage, who still refuses to let them pass, and then you're like, both of them are in their own way trying to prove that they can be a part of this war and they should be able to take part. And and then after Raikage finally agrees, Naruto and V are ready, but at the end you've got the climate of like Toby with the 6 Jinchuriki that of the tailed beasts that we had that were taken by the Akatsuki have become sort of like the new 6 paths of sages, if you will, for like to prepare for the next day of battle. So the day 1 is the only time I could feel like you could separate one part of the war arc with the other, but even then that's still a bit, I don't know, but it's like
I would disagree with that there's different reasons you could give, but I think
you're breaking up a little bit.
Good one would be just that's probably because I'm driving to the gym right now. I could not wait any longer. My gym closed at 4 today, so I gotta like bang out this workout. But
okay.
When you look at like what themes are being focused on, what characters are being focused on, what antagonist is being focused on in relation to the themes, there's like for example, when Obito's mask is off versus when his mask is on, the characters being focused on, who's being the opposing force, what themes they're focusing on, they're different. When Madara takes over, Naruto and Madara aren't debating on what it means to be Hokage, whether Shinobi should endure or not. Like, they're doing completely different things.
It's in the same way that you can think about the tuning exams versus Konoha Crush being two completely different arcs, even though they take place sequentially, literally zero time in between them. But like one's focusing on Neji and Destiny, the other's focusing on Gaara and where true strength comes from. It's like completely different ideas they're doing there.
Exactly, and with Orochimaru's a villain in both too, but in one case he's not doing the where true strength comes from, all ninjutsu mastering thing. The other one he is. There's a difference there too, just by being the same character in that case.
I do think the easiest way to think about it, though, is if you guys have seen Dragon Ball, Naruto really should have just taken this colloquially. But Dragon Ball is divided not into arcs, but into sagas, is how people think about them. So, for example, the Cell Saga. But I'm sure we would all agree, the Cell Saga, every saga is divided into multiple arcs. You have, for example, the Android arc separate from the Cell arc, but they all fall placed into the same saga. So I think rather than looking at Naruto's war arc as an arc, it's more like a war saga, which has multiple arcs divided up inside of that saga.
My biggest problem with that is I don't feel like Naruto's time zone, inverse time zone, gives you an ideal place to separate arcs, because the majority of it is happening in one day.
Yeah, but would you say the same thing about tuning exams in Konoha Crush?
Okay, I would say arguably, well, the tuning exams spans throughout multiple days throughout the arc, if you will, and in some ways you could maybe separate the Konoha Crush and the tuning exams, but I have seen people also view it as more of the same arc.
Well, I mean, some people do. It is officially two separate arcs, but ignoring that. But
because sort of like because I think Naruto, you're introduced to the Sand siblings at the beginning of the arc, and Naruto is fighting Gaara at the end of like the arc, if you will.
Yeah. So I can't blame people if they don't realize, because this isn't like intuitive per se. Also, I do think some people that do know will just lump them all together for simplicity's sake, just for easiness of just talking. So I think both those aspects exist, but technically it is two different arcs.
I think there's another way to kind of look at it, though, would be like, so for example, the Sasuke retrieval arc, what's the danger, the threat they're trying to prevent, but Sasuke going to Orochimaru? No matter what obstacle shows up in their way, Kimimaro, Southport, and so on, Sasuke himself, it's always prevent Sasuke from going to Orochimaru. Consistent throughout the whole arc. And that's true for most arcs. It's consistent things. The Land of Waves, it's prevent Kazuna from being killed by the assassins. Most notably, Sub-Sun Haku. The tuning exams, it's beat the tuning exams. And so on. Konoha Crush, it's stop Orochimaru, stop Gaara. With the war arc, though, it changes. It starts with things like, here's a pretty clear big change. Prevent the Ten Tails from being resurrected. Then it gets resurrected, and it's prevent the Ten Tails Shinchuriki from casting Infinite Tsukiyomi. So then you prevent that, and now we've got a new, I technically it's repeated with Madara, but it's a new character they're trying to work with. In any case, he cast Infinite Tsukiyomi. So that's even a difference there too. So now it's about undoing Infinite Tsukiyomi. So if there's changes in like what they need to do, so obviously Infinite Tsukiyomi is always the plan, but that like direct thing they're trying to stop changes.
I in fact I will double down on what Kamui's saying there by showing with Dragon Ball different characters accomplishing the same goal does make it different. Because they're both Madara and Obito are trying to do Infinite Tsukiyomi, but okay. Vegeta, when he shows up looking for the Dragon Balls on Earth in the Namek Saga, he's looking for immortality. Oh, but then Frieza and the Namek Saga wants immortality. It's the same goal. They're both looking for Dragon Balls for the same idea, but two completely different characters, motivations, two different arcs. Like, it's a little bit more clear in the Dragon Ball example, but same concept.
Well, in that case, like, they team up with Vegeta because he's obviously the lesser of two evils.
Yeah. I mean, like, even like before the Frieza stuff, Vegeta's doing that.
Another more extreme one would be well, you're not going to say Konoha Crush and the Pain arc at the same arc, but Orochimaru and Pain are both destroying the Leaf Village. You know.
Well, the invasions are quite different and for different reasons, really. Orochimaru is invading Konoha because he wants it to not only destroyed, but he also wants to retrieve Sasuke for his next host body, if you will. Pain, he's just, truthfully, he's just after Naruto the Nine Tails. He only destroys the village when he gets egged on enough by Tsunade after their conversation.
Madara, Obito, and Kaguya all have their own unique reasons for infinite Tsukuyomi, even if there's similarities.
Well, to be honest, only Madara and Obito are similar, if you will, because their goal was to create like this dream world where everyone had their best desires in their dreams, if you will.
But it's similar, but there's...
But Kaguya... But when Kaguya won, that thing is completely retconned because it's like, oh no, wait, the infinite Tsukuyomi actually turns you into White Zetsu as she's planning a sort of like army against this unknown force that we have no idea about until we get to like all the Boruto stuff, which frankly seems a bit baffling because from what we saw throughout the war, the White Zetsus are majority weak. They're like fodder soldiers, if you will, only really threatening when they disguise yourself as like your allies and friends, if you will, because you can't tell the difference except for Naruto's emotion sensing. And the only exception is the Spiral Zetsu, apparently
about that.
Who seems to have, that can have like Kage level strength, but we don't know if that's just strength he has by himself or when he's having a host inside him, like Obito or Yamato.
Yeah, so actually about that real quick, because everyone likes to bring that up. To be fair to the story on this one, the original Light Zetsus are the one in the Akatsuki and Guru. Those two are way better than the Warwick ones. And you can just chalk that up to whatever Obito did to like clone all those Light Zetsu with the Ghetto statue could have just resulted in weaker clones. That's why they're funner. Because the original Light Zetsu, he's doing the Spore Jutsu that gets all 5 Kage. Nobody's canonically ever noticed it besides Orochimaru. Black Zetsu's taken on Kage plus multiple people take on Casey and Naruto clones. He's doing fine. And then Guru, we all know, spite Kage at the same time, stalemating Hiruzen and all these other people. So those two are clearly stronger than the others.
Well, arguably, yeah, they're stronger than the others, though. Remember, Toby also said that White Zetsu in the Kage Summit, you're not really much of a fighter.
Yeah, he's just wrong. Just ignore that.
But,
White Zetsu
and the Black Zetsu at the time, we don't know what exactly he is, though granted, we are told that he is created from Madara's will, if you will, but it seems like he is yet. So as a result, arguably, if he's created from Madara, he seems to be a little much better at using the abilities he's given, especially since he still seems to have some of White Zetsu's parts on him. He was able to use Wood Style, if you will, to a more effective range.
Yeah.
But in terms of the general forces of the White Zetsus, only really Spiral Zetsu seems like a credible threat, but he's more of like on the side, really, and we don't know if how strong he is without a host. So
well, actually, no. But again, though, my point there is to say, when Kage does Infinite Tsukuyomi, it's not going to be the same as that 10,000 or 100,000 White Zetsu army. It's going to be 100,000 Kurugurus and original White Zetsus with their spores and shit. It's going to be 100,000 or a billion, however many people on Earth, of those Zetsu. So imagine 100,000 Kage level fighters. Well, 5 of them freaking was taking on Kinshiki pretty good. I get 100,000. Now you can say, okay, I see why they're relevant.
That's
funny.
Are you talking about? Are you talking about the Boruto movie fights?
Yes, and I understand Boruto's power clipping, blah blah blah. My point's just that it's not going to be 100,000 of these Kiba levels Zetsu. It's 100,000 of these 5 Kage levels Zetsu.
Well, we don't know exactly if those Zetsus would have had the same strength as when they were like Kages or not.
We don't actually know, but
it doesn't remain clear and all that stuff. And if that was the case, wouldn't it be a bit pointless to try and kill as many ninjas, since So you probably want as many strong ninjas to become these forces rather than.
Well, Kaguya's not killing any of them.
Fine, or whatever. Okay, technically.
Yeah, just because Obito does it. I mean, Setsu's priority is going to be bring back Kaguya. So Obito and Madara want to kill a bunch of ninja. He's not going to stop them. He means bring back Kaguya.
I mean, if you remember Swirly Zetsu right before Kakashi kills Rin, Swirly Zetsu tells Obito, "Let me do all the fighting because I'm stronger than you, Obito." So I mean, that's saying what Swirly Zetsu's power level is.
Here's a. Sorry, what was that last bit?
Swirly Zetsu's strong, bro. Like, I understand he's controlling the statue in the War Arc, but, like, he's still doing that, and he is just contesting, like, the entirety of the Alliance all by himself.
Arguably, yeah, but it's like, is he just the one exception? Is he, like, 1 in 100,000, 1 in a million? It's not really made clear.
I don't think so. I don't
think so, because he and the other White Zetsu are the only original ones that weren't, like, clones from the Ghetto statue. And like I said, well, one's more hack space than the other. Regular White Zetsu can spore jutsu, and pretty much anyone they can't tell. It gets them 100% success rate story, no matter how strong they are, and it works on them, unless they have like a specific counter to it.
Yeah.
At the very least, them teaming up, you spore jutsu Momoshiki, then Spiral Zetsu punches them with the Buddha statue.
Well, I'm pretty certain that the Otsutskis would probably have something to counter that spore jutsu, to be honest. But I think anyway, let's see. I think I wanted to bring up some comments. I think Space says, funny we mentioned the Cell Saga since it's pretty well known that stuff was made up in the last minutes. Someone called Deniro 1952 says arcs need a self-contained narrative structure, which these mini arcs within the saga simply don't have.
Yeah.
And okay.
And that does apply to the war situation, though. Yeah, the narrative structure is the main reason.
Yeah, I think. And Certain B says shifting the villain 3 times infamously, and it worked like magic. Wait, what? Is that in regards to the Cell Saga or the Naruto one? Oh yeah. Which arguably I think for many people just having another big bad twist villain being behind everything after like Madara was just too much.
Yeah.
Well, okay, that's understandable regardless. Oodie, if you don't have anything else to say, I can get into the third question that I was gonna present based on whatever BlueStar said like an hour ago.
Okay, I guess so. Greg, do you have any comments that you need to say before we get this last question?
I think people's problem with Kaguya was more that, she was just she doesn't really have much of a personality because she's just very quiet, and it's like, and none of the characters really react, like, they're just like, oh, okay, this has happened, let's just go with it. It's like, I think it's just, the character was just, a whole bunch of things led to the character being poorly received, I'd say.
Yeah, so I actually, okay, so I'm not going to say 100% agree, because I agree, but I'm not going to say she has nothing, but comparatively to a lot of other characters, yeah, she's not as expressive. But this is a good segue, actually. So it's very easy to say you don't like this concept, and that's fine, but it is important to understand this concept. And it's Kaguya versus Black Zetsu as the final villain. Who is it really? Because I think you can make a lot of arguments to say it's not Kaguya, it's Black Zetsu. Kaguya is just the puppet that does the fighting, but Black Zetsu's the character who is the final villain. And he's the one who's been around. He's the one who's been lurking around in the shadows. He's the one doing all these things all this time forward, which would essentially mean the Kaguya foreshadowing isn't as needed because she's not really the villain. She's just the war machine. She's the tank that he's piloting.
The meat puppet.
Or he's quite literally telling her what
kind of an analogy would be Obito versus the Tin Tails inside of Obito, giving Obito the power.
Yeah.
Well, for me, with that regards, okay, Black Zetsu, if you argued the main villain kind of thing, okay, he's a bit more established, but the problem is he's not exactly a well-developed. He's more of like the We just know him as like the henchman villain.
Well, that's the thing, though. But it's to say he's not really the henchman. He is the mastermind. Which I mean,
by that same metric, Kimimaro was the henchman to Orochimaru, and he looked up to him as like a god from Kimimaro's perspective. But Kimimaro's still the big, bad final villain of that arc. It's not Orochimaru. He's not even present in the arc.
No, no, but he's more of an overarching villain throughout like part 1, and we know Kimimaro is not going to be the final villain, if you will.
Yeah, let's just say that Orochimaru in this case would be Black Zetsu. He's the mastermind who's the problem. Kimimaro is the war machine doing the fighting in this situation.
Yeah.
Okay. Could you want some comments? And did you want to say something about this, Greg? While I try to respond, or you were listening, right?
Sorry about that. I was getting a drink. I didn't hear you.
Okay. So apparently, they're sort of bringing up that Black Zetsu, is technically, arguably the final villain because mastermind.
I mean, I guess you could argue that, but I think it's just with Black Zetsu. It's like Kishimoto clearly couldn't decide what he was at times, and then ultimately he settled on he was trying to bring Kaguya back. Even though I think there's a panel that shows Madara working on him once.
Oh, yeah. Well, Madara apparently created him,
but
yeah.
So at the very least, I think that we could at least compromise by saying they're equal by looking at another similar character in this regard. You have Sakon and Ukon. You could say one takes the priority over the other, because that's the one we see the majority of the time, but when things really get dicey, they both come out. They both have equal personality. We would say that Sakon and Ukon are like equal in terms of being the final villain of the Kiba fight, I guess you could say. You could say the same with Kaguya and Zetsu, where they're equal importance. One exists because of the other, etc., rather than one prioritized over the other. That's like at least a compromise we could do there.
Yeah, but I think the biggest problem is that Sakon and Ukon are more like a henchman villain rather than a big main villain, if you will. And it's like they're this cool like character that's twins that have to share the same body, if you will. So but I think like the biggest problem I think with Black Zetsu is while okay, he's the like brains and mastermind, I feel like he's like there's not enough of him in the actual fight to like clash with like ideals between Naruto.
Well, actually, no, he's the only one clashing ideas. In fact, more than Madara, because Naruto and Madara don't debate on the Infinite Tsukuyomi actually, but they do have stuff in terms of shinobi history with Naruto and Black Zetsu.
Yeah, another comparison.
Doing all
that. The biggest I'd say with that, Naruto and Madara look like they were about to clash on the ideals of Infinite Tsukuyomi. Now saying
nothing. Naruto was not giving an answer. He's just saying, "Stop, bro."
Naruto doesn't have anything to say about that. Because Infinite Tsukuyomi isn't something for... Like, Madara isn't Naruto's villain to fight. It doesn't narratively really make as much sense for them to have that kind of clash.
Here's the thing. Madara is sort of like... Okay, I'm going to say this. With Madara, even there is a bit of to have with, like... Well, yes, maybe not. Madara and Naruto do not know each other personally. Madara is still technically the villain that has... Let's see, been behind the scenes of like corrupting Obito, who caused all like the things that personally affected Naruto and Sasuke when they were younger. Also, Madara is a founder of the same village that Naruto and Sasuke grew up in, and Madara is a part of the same clan that Sasuke is a part of. So there is.
But Naruto and Sasuke don't care. Is the thing, and you can say that's bad. But they just don't care about that shit with Madara. Like, they're not upset by it.
So, like, as an example,
the story's not emphasizing that either.
Like, in the same way Naruto doesn't talk no jutsu Kakuzu because there's nothing to relate there to, he just goes in with the hands. He's doing the same thing with Madara. He's not planning to talk down Madara. He just wants to fight him to the death.
Well, yeah, that's why I think that was unique. I think that was the thing about Madara that made him unique, is Kishibe created a villain who Naruto couldn't talk down. So,
what I mean by that isn't that Madara wouldn't talk down, because I agree with you. Madara wouldn't budge or compromise. I'm looking at it from Naruto's perspective, to where Naruto isn't even going to try. Not that Naruto's going to try and fail. Naruto knows from the get-go. Madara's not someone that he can do that with, so he's not even gonna bother with it.
He's not even, like, inspired to, almost.
Yeah.
Hold on, just trying to... Sorry, I just got a bunch of comments that kind of back and forth. Could you say that again? Just so I can...
It's the idea that Naruto isn't trying to change Madara.
Well, to be fair, he was told firsthand, don't try to reason with Madara, and that doesn't mean that, well, they don't need to reason. That doesn't mean they can't clash about it, because Madara, after doing Infinite Tsukiyomi, saying, oh, look, everyone's happy, but Naruto's calling it out as a bit of a lie, if you will, these dreams. So it feels like there was about to be some sort of clash about the Infinite Tsukiyomi, but before that happened, you had Black Zetsu stabbing with the whole twist, and then Kaguya comes out, and arguably no one really, arguably, while Kaguya, only really Naruto and Sasuke have only a vague concept of who Kaguya is. The rest of the characters there have no idea who she is. I'm referring to, like, Sasuke and Kakashi, but at least with Madara, he's like the founder, one of the founders of their village, so... And he's been, and not to mention, they have been fighting him, like, most of, like, night 2 of the second day of the war arc, so...
I mean, you did mention that Obito is the one who did, like, everything wrong in the ninja world, and Madara is the one who manipulated Obito to be like that. Well, then you could take it a step further to say Zetsu's the one that manipulated Madara, so we're just going further on the totem pole. Obviously, everyone knows that, like, meme of, like, the puppet strings or whatever. But I think based on that, at the very least, you could grant Zetsu the final villain over Kaguya based on that alone.
I think the only way, to me, the whole Zetsu being the final villain would have worked if it wasn't that, instead of trying to bring back Kaguya, he turned out he was actually the mind of the Ten Tails, because we know that the Ten Tails was a bit of a mindless...
I've done that rewrite before, too.
Yeah.
It was a mindless beast, if you will, but all the other tailed beasts seem to have intelligence. But let's see. But it could have revealed that when the Ten Tails was sealed, he separated his mind from the body, and has just been planning this whole time to eventually return to his actual body.
Yeah, I can see that.
I've talked about that
I feel like,
rewrite.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like,
which I think is cool. But
if that was the whole thing, I feel like there'll be a lot less people complaining, because you're now separating the final villain as not just one bad, but there's two. One that rarely has a bit of a personality, is all the muscle, and one that has somewhat of a personality, but seems to keep changing, especially with his motive and goals, as you will. I
do think with the same idea, though, because Kaguya, in that same way, just is the Ten Tails, the muscle with no character. But then you look at Naruto versus Gaara. Who's the final villain of that arc? It's Gaara, not Shukaku. Despite Shukaku literally coming out, Gaara's literally asleep, but Gaara's the one who Naruto's ideologically clashing with. You know, he's not trying to talk no jutsu Shukaku, despite Shukaku being superior to Gaara, etc., etc. It's always about Gaara, even when Shukaku's out. I think in the same way, it's about Zetsu, despite Kaguya being the one in the forefront.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. You don't need to do anything to Zetsu to beat Kaguya. You just have to, like, seal Kaguya. Zetsu only got caught up in the seal because Naruto's like found you and kicked you in and all that stuff. So it's not like with Shikaku at the very least. Naruto still needed to try and at least knock out Gaara to some extent and wake Gaara up.
Well, Naruto has to do that with Black Zetsu. he has to go out
Black
of his way to get him
Setsu has nothing to do with like Kaguya being defeated, really.
Well, neither does Gaara with Shukaku. Like the whole arc, Gaara is trying to awaken Shukaku, not Black Setsu awaken Kaguya.
Which by that same extent, it sounds ridiculous to say, but Gaara's the henchman, Shukaku's the main final boss, technically.
Well,
he's the bigger threat.
Yeah.
Well, arguably, Shukaku's the bigger threat, but Gaara arguably is the bigger threat, but Gaara and Shukaku are more connected, if you will, where as long as Gaara's asleep, Shukaku's out, but once he wakes up, he's gone. I know. Do you want to say something, Greg? Or
I think I've said what I need to say.
Well, to be fair, Black Setsu was connected to Kaguya's arm. Naruto just chopped off that arm.
Yeah, but it's not like Zetsu also needed to be sealed in order to have Kaguya sealed as well.
Okay.
He just got caught into that, if you will.
I did want to run an idea by you guys, something that I was discussing last night. So shout out Trippy. Trippy made this video and he brought up something in the video. So if you ignore the Naruto anime and all of the movies and Boruto, and you only look at the Naruto manga, only that, there's nothing saying that Kaguya is an alien. There's nothing implying it or alluding it or foreshadowing it. There's nothing there. The only thing we get is Hagoromo says she came from far away and it doesn't matter where. That could just be a faraway land on Earth, which would line up with Madara's story, the original legend of Kaguya, that she's a princess who ate the chakra fruit to stop the war. So in the manga, if you look at only Kishimoto's original idea, Kaguya just is a human or a princess rather than an alien, and I think that also helps fix a lot of people's problems with Kaguya, if you think about it like that.
Alien.
Well, yeah, arguably the alien is one issue, but one issue is that the manga also implies that, Kaguya is building an army for something, and it's like, wait, what forces against that? And argued, in order to find that out, you need to watch or read some of the spin-offs.
I don't think so, actually, because if you consider Madara's original story, she quote-unquote ended the war by herself. She could have used an army to help her do that, and then she's just like wants to maintain her rule, basically.
Yeah, I mean, she was just a tyrant. She was power hungry, etc., etc. So I don't think that's too off the line to say she wanted an army. In the same way, Obito could have ended the war by himself at any point, but he still had the 100,000 white Zetsu.
Well, the thing is, when you talk about building an army for something, that means you expect her to be fighting something.
Not necessarily. They could just be slaves.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like
they refer to as soldiers, to be fair.
It's like if you want to rule, but you never make it clear that you're just having an army so you have some force to rule over. But you're turning the entire population into Zetsu. It's not like you're making them into like this new society or this new slave thing. It's just like you're building an army to fight something.
I mean, it was said that Kaguya had enough power to end the war all by herself, but maybe she was making the army to take over the entire world. Maybe she didn't have that much power in the original story.
But with like Infinite Tsukuyomi and everyone in it, she's fundamentally already taken over the world. There's no need to make an army.
Well, she did actually put everyone in it.
Well, okay, Madara did, but still, it's like everyone is, unless. Oh wait, is she only gonna keep a select few into this army and all that stuff, and is she gonna release everyone else? Because that concept is not made clear.
Yeah, I'm fuzzy on how that connects to Ideal Dream World as well.
What do you mean by that?
Like, okay, it's like Madara wants to put them in this, ideal dream world where everyone can live the lives they want, and then suddenly we're told to believe, actually, the whole plan is to turn people into Zetsus, and it's like, okay, I'm not sure how those two things connect, but...
Well, I mean, Nagato's plan and Obito's plan are very different.
Yeah. Well, I think Kishimoto added that to give, like, incentive to get them out of the Genjutsu before it was too late.
Low-key, it could be the way to write it in to where he doesn't have to prove ideologically Infinite Tsukiyomi bad, because he's just saying, oh, look, it's corrupt and evil. There, I addressed it.
Then arguably he's doing a bit of a cop-out there.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's kind of what Kishimoto tends to do when he writes himself into a corner.
And, well, arguably, yes, it turns out Pain's goals and Obito's goals were different. He still had, like, collecting, like, the tailed beasts, and arguably Pain
applies to Kaguya. Because the tailed beasts need to be collected, and Infinite Tsukiyomi needs to be cast.
Yeah, but it's like Kaguya's reasonings kind of retcon what we were told what Infinite Tsukiyomi was supposed to be.
Well, you could argue they retconned what the absorbing the tail beast and the ghetto statue was supposed to do, because Kakuto's saying he's gonna make a weapon, a tail beast weapon that he can distribute across the world, whereas it's gonna make the 10 tails. But that doesn't seem to be anyone's complaint.
Well, I would say the biggest reason for that is it's not when all this stuff was revealed, it was done in, say, the Kage Summit arc and not last minute in the war, because it's like, oh, we've just been changing what we've been fighting against.
I think a similar comparison would be, and to be fair, no one says that they're great, but the Land of Iron and the Five Kage Summit, the penultimate arc, introduces the samurai. That's very, very late for like a sixth great nation, basically, in the whole world that could have been here the entire time, and it wasn't at all. So I'll admit that. But if they were introduced like in the war arc, which is the final arc, that might be too late to do it, and now it might be a problem. If they're just coming out of nowhere and being useful and taking down all these enemies and all that.
Yeah, arguably the samurai are very late concept, which is what I think no one actually cares about them.
No one cares, but from what I've seen, no one really complains about them or has them as a critique of them being too late. So I think it's like maybe just
they don't do anything. They're just there for like they're never really brought up again.
Oh yeah, that's fair. It is more like day one of the war arc, not even really there in day two.
You maybe mute yourself for a second.
Kamui, your thing is very loud.
Blame the radio.
Yeah, I can tell.
1 second.
Okay. But yeah, lots of interesting ideas here. Now, I do want to add, BlueStar, earlier you did mention that you wish there was more build-up towards Kaguya. Now, obviously, you also said at some point that Kaguya was a twist. And I do think in a way these two ideas do collide. The more build-up you give for Kaguya, the less of a twist that Kaguya's revival is.
Well, arguably, yes, less of a twist, but let's see. But not all twists, I would say, work, because for many people, Madara being replaced as the final villain with Kaguya, it's like, for everyone, Madara was more of an interesting character. Now, yes, I know you say he doesn't have much of a connection with Naruto personally, but Madara does have this history with Kahona, the village Hashiyama, and given how Madara and Hashiyama like parallels Naruto and Sasuke, there's enough to work in there.
Yeah, so I don't think that's a problem, that he's not Naruto's villain, because he is still someone's villain. And I would say he's a reflection of the world, which are themes and obstacles and stakes that do need to be addressed. It's just that Naruto's not the best person to personally address those.
Well, then, see. But but that doesn't mean that he's also... Hold on. Do you have anything to say about that, Greg, first?
Not really.
Oh, for God's sake. Okay, okay.
What's wrong?
I'm trying to think of something to respond. I was hoping that you might have something, but
I'm kind of like a little, I don't know, I'm still kind of sick, so I'm kind of affecting my productivity.
Oh boy. Okay. You say that Naruto is not the right person to challenge Madara, right?
Yeah, because like personally, what Naruto's ideals are about, it doesn't work for him. So like as an example, if Naruto fought Kabuto, what really are they going to talk about? Itachi is Kabuto's villain because Itachi sees Kabuto in him and the mistakes that Itachi made in the past and the connection there, the reflection. Itachi feels like he can help Kabuto, etc., etc. Naruto doesn't really have anything like that with Kabuto, so there wouldn't really be as much there for those two characters to interact about. Not that they can't talk in their fight about what they think is right or wrong, but that the personal connection there isn't as strong. In the same way, Naruto and Gaara had a lot of connection because of the whole Jinchuriki pain alone past thing that they had going on. If hypothetically, I don't know, Shino were to face off against Gaara instead of Naruto, then they don't really have as much similarities to have an ideological clash on.
Well,
I would agree with that. Yeah,
the biggest problem is that Kaguya has no ideology for Naruto to clash either with, and at the very least, Madara is at least. Madara at least is like at least has the connections with Kohona and all that stuff. The Uchiha clan, which Naruto has gone into a bit of clashes with, and at the very least, Madara is like basically like his whole plan of Infinite Tsukiyomi is basically everyone not making their dreams a reality and just best to have in a dream world. Well, Naruto at least can clash with saying like, no, you gotta make the dreams happen in real life. Now, arguably, you could say that this was clashing a bit with Obito, but you could also apply that with Madara. But Kaguya, she just wants to create a damn army or something. It's like, doesn't really give a damn about humans and all that stuff.
I don't know what Boruto's done with it, but the villains of the movie, weren't they trying to do something related to that? I'm not sure if I don't remember too well. They were trying to like, what were they trying to do in the movie? The villains of the Boruto movie, I forget their names.
Momoshiki and Kinshiki, they're just genocidal maniacs. There's no, like, a sympathetic connection to anything. They don't care about Earth. They just want to be terrorists to just destroy the Earth for their own selfish gain.
Yeah, I think, if anything with Boruto, the villains have, from what I've been told, the villains have not been well received.
Well, I think just the Boruto series in general hasn't, but yeah.
Let's see. Yeah.
Somehow it lasted 10 years.
Certain B says Sasuke and Madara can bounce off because both of them have different ways of addressing the shortcomings of the system. Sasuke wants to reform the system by cutting the past down. Madara, Infinite Tsukiyomi. Arguably, you could have perhaps maybe include Naruto there as well as like change from within or something. But I know, but yeah, I'd say.
Well, part of that is Sasuke's blind to what Madara is doing because he's trying to stop Madara, yet is trying to, in a way, doing the exact same thing that both Madara and Kaguya, who he likewise tried to stop, he's doing the same thing as what they're doing. It's like that hypocrisy that he's blind to, but only to an extent, because he does like hesitate, so he realizes it deep down, but he doesn't really accept it, because he wants to just move forward and do it anyways. But Sasuke is the byproduct of the shinobi system. Naruto addresses that in the final fight when he fights Sasuke, so it would be almost redundant or take away from the Naruto and Sasuke fight if Naruto addresses the systemic issues in the Madara clash if they did that instead.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the biggest problem is that, okay, you've got what? Okay, Obito. Let's see. Okay, first at the beginning of the arc, Obito was the big bad. Okay, midway arc, it's revealed. All right, Madara. But now at the end, you're saying, oh wait, no, there's another big bad. You can't keep replacing villains over and over again. Let's see, throughout the same arc or saga, if you will, if it's gonna like if it's like the final conflict of the series, if you will, and just saying, oh no, this is the real mastermind, because while that might work in a saga that's not the final one, like say the Cell saga, it like Naruto is supposed to be the climax in which you've built up, let's see, Madara and Uchiha clan more or less as the antagonists, and now you're just introducing this new clan, and if you will, that seems more of this like to build a spin-off for the next series that happened to have the Byakugan just to justify having like Naruto and Hinata having a kid together or something.
Well, which he forgot to give them to initially, and then he just kind of like put it in later or something.
Yeah. So maybe that would be a little bit more helped if it was a little bit more clear that there's a clear divider between the different arcs in the war arc. If there's like time in between or some moments where the characters just to relax.
Well, like I said a bit earlier, the biggest problem with that is like so much happens in one day. It's hard to really separate them into.
Exactly. So by that metric, it might also feel rushed, as opposed if you just take a breather, make the arcs more clear that there's dividers, so that it's clear that the arcs are different, so that you can see what the different arcs are about. If one arc is about the shinobi system rather than the war, as example, if one is about despair and overcoming and enduring as a shinobi rather than just the war, where that's also happening, then I think that might become a little bit more clear.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I'd say, if perhaps Naruto was like war arc was like Gintama's final 4 arcs, where they're like these loosely connected Ritzy arcs that led up to like first there's like an assassination arc, a prison raid arc, a battle on another planet, and then like a battle for like Earth, if you will. All these arcs were sort of loosely connected, building up like this villain that ended up being the final antagonist of the series. I think if that wasn't more like that, there'd be a lot less complaints to the war arc. Kamui, if you have any comments, feel free to unmute yourself. And I know I said you should mute yourself when the radio thing is, but I haven't heard you comment for a while now.
Yeah.
There's if you have any comments to say. Or perhaps, let's see, he's too busy doing his jogging.
He might be at the radio still, but I guess I'll say part of it is also people complain like about a separate thing, but like it's still a complaint. People complain that the war arc in Universe is too short anyways, that all the other wars last years.
A day and a half, I think, in Universe.
Yeah, it's a day and a half, whereas all the other wars lasted years. So if you at least bump that up to like a week, that not only addresses this critique, but I think it also gives time to breathe rather than the whole arc feeling rushed all at once.
Really, what the problem was, there needed to be some like epilogue. I don't know what the right word is. Some chapters after the war ended to like establish what the world was going to be like after. There really needed to be some chapters, like, of downtime, like, what's changing, but he only had so many chapters left, so he had to basically rush and wrap it all up in one chapter.
That's fair.
That is one issue, but yeah, arguably at minimum the war arc probably should have been 1 week, just because there's like too much happened in one day, and also the fact that, let's see, it's like you kind of had Neji even say a comment earlier at the beginning of like, it's not like one day you can expect everyone to get along, and it's like that kind of did happen.
Yeah, or or the fact that there were so many casualties in just one day of fighting was just kind of funny to me.
Yeah, it's like that was kind of like it's like half of each side lost their forces, if you will,
in one day. And I was like, that's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, especially when it feels like the forces that were fighting don't really match the casualty numbers. Okay,
well, here's the thing. I think with Kishi, like what needed to be happen, we needed a sense of that the war was going bad for the good guys, and then he could have brought Naruto in. But kind of like how with the Pain Saga, Naruto comes in when the village is destroyed, and just in the war, it feels like the good guys are mostly winning their fights, and then Naruto comes in, and it's like, I have to wonder if that came about because his editor told him, yeah, you have to get Naruto back in the fray, and Kishimoto maybe wanted to leave him out a little longer, but I don't know for sure if that's true.
I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case, though. I think it also doesn't help that many of the matchups in the first day were ones that no one really cared about.
Oh yeah, I think I said in my video, we start off with a bunch of unimportant characters fighting.
Let's see. I mean, at least Sai and Kankuro against Sasori and Deidara, kinda I can see, but let's see. But it's like you had like Hanzo versus Mifune, and then you had like Dari versus those Gold and Silver brothers.
Hanzo was said to be the guy who the legendary Sanyan had to take down, and Mifune beat him in one stroke, and it was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And I'd definitely say, we mentioned the samurai a bit earlier. I'd say, well, the concept of the samurai, not a bad idea for Naruto, but it's like too late of a concept. Perhaps if like a samurai was introduced either as like a member of the Akatsuki or even heck Sasuke's group or something, I could see people being a bit more interested.
Especially since Sasuke's a swordsman anyways at the beginning of Shippuden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, this is the guy that trained Sasuke in swordsmanship or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who knows? Maybe you could have him as like someone that fights Kakashi.
Or does he just know it like in Shippuden automatically?
Oh, it's implied Orochimaru trained him with the sword.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I definitely say if like the only way I could believe maybe the casualty numbers being so high is if like Toby used the tailed beasts to go on a rampage.
But he didn't.
Which he didn't, and it's like perhaps if that was the case, it's like it would put pressure on the Allied forces to use their own tailed beasts, because as we've seen in Naruto lore, the only way to counter the tailed beasts is to have either the Sharingan or the wood style, and all the Sharingan users minus Kakashi are on the enemy side, and Yamato, the wood style user, has been taken captive, so the only way to combat them is with Jinchuriki.
Yeah, I would say Sasuke wasn't really on any side but his own at the beginning. He was just like, morally, he was neutral. He wasn't on either side. That's how I look at that.
Well, that is true, but I would say, as far as the Allied forces were concerned, he was a member of the Akatsuki.
Yeah, but if you'd ask Sasuke, he'd say, "I'm on no one's side but my own."
Yeah, that is true, but that is true, arguably. But let's see, but the Allied forces would probably still see him as like a hostile force at the time. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose we've got
imagined that moment. I think what was it when before he sees Itachi, when he goes to when he's gonna go to the battle, and I always imagined after the Allied forces arrived to back Naruto up against Obito, Madara, and the Ten Tails. I always imagined if he hadn't met Itachi there, Sasuke would have gone straight there. I always imagined Sasuke showing up, Naruto freezing because he senses Sasuke nearby, and Sasuke just lands in the middle. He's like, "Naruto, I'm here to kill you. Is this a bad time?"
Yes, that'd be so cool to shake up everything. He'd basically be the Kimimaro of the war arc if he did that.
Oh yeah. But of course he encountered Itachi, and it's like, okay, his priorities shifted.
Yeah.
Which I feel like Kishimoto only did because he realized, okay, I've put Sasuke in a position where he is completely hostile to the Leaf Village, which arguably would do have a good setup for a fight between Naruto and Sasuke. But as the final fight, I can't have exactly Sasuke become a good guy suddenly after that. So it's like, okay, have Itachi come in, and then as a result, Sasuke starts questioning, does he actually want to destroy Kahona? But no, it then instead changed that, he's going to rule it, but not in the ideal way that, let's see, the previous Kage or Itachi would have wanted.
Yeah.
So I think that bit there. But I suppose we should probably get back to the Kaguya thing.
Yeah, I wanted to say on Sasuke seeing Itachi, man, sure is a good thing by sheer coincidence and pure luck that of the entire world they had to run across, sure is a good thing Sasuke and Itachi crossed paths like a singular tree limb apart so that Sasuke could see Itachi.
Yeah, I think that was done because it was I can't have Naruto and Sasuke fight yet, so I need something for Sasuke to do. So that's what he did. So that's why he did that.
Not only are they running in exact opposite directions as opposed to at some weird other angle, it's just by sheer coincidence. It's like they're basically doing a high five as they pass by, rather than just being, Itachi's in the distance in my eyesight. But it's like right next to each other.
They really pass each other at the same time. It's just well, that's an amazing coincidence.
Exactly. That's funny.
But anyway, with Kaguya, where were we with Kaguya?
I think we were with Black Setsu, I think.
Well, I wanted to get, Greg, your opinion on to what extent should they have balanced the build-up with Kaguya with the plot twist of Kaguya? Assuming that we had to do Kaguya, what balance would you do?
That's a tricky question because I feel Madara already served those roles that he was doing with Kaguya anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And like with Black Zetsu, I feel like there could have been some hints throughout the series, I'm so that he was planning something, but you didn't really get that.
Yeah.
I think I don't know. Like I said, Kishi, he writes on a whim.
Yeah, well, Kishimoto admitted he doesn't know what he's gonna do with Zetsu. He's just riding him, and he'll figure it out later.
Yeah, well, that kind of applies to most of Naruto.
Yeah.
I would probably say I feel like the twist doesn't work because there's not much, I guess, Nancy hints. Because for Star Wars, we know everyone knows the infamous Empire Strikes Back twist, right? The I am your thing.
Yeah, I actually that's funny because I wanted to mention that earlier because I haven't seen the movies, but from what I understand, as someone who hasn't seen the movies and is probably wrong on this, that's a pure plot twist with no build up to that. I could be wrong.
Well, it was not okay. I'll say this: it was not the initial idea George had for the character of Darth Vader and Darth Vader, if you will, but. Let's see, he came up with the idea throughout the film, but there's at least one scene before which, subtly foreshadows where Luke is training on Dagobah, and he ends up fighting a vision of Darth Vader, and when he seemingly beats it, and the mask blows, and he sees his own face within it, if you will. And arguably this is like a... subtle hint that Luke could become Darth Vader because turns out Darth Vader is more connected to Luke than he first thought.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hello, Kamui. You're
obviously,
yeah, I just waited until I was
he wasn't meant to be Luke's father at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like if perhaps Kaguya was perhaps mentioned much sooner, and even if you're just saying just the mother of the Sage of Six Paths, if you will, maybe if you mentioned how a princess once angered the Ten Tails and he caused a rampage, perhaps if you had the story like that, maybe just fake hints, and the more fake hints you add, there's and maybe reference the name Kaguya.
Just to clarify, because I might have just misheard you just now. So I would take Madara's story, repeat it real quick, and then offer a very slight twist. So the story, as Madara explains, is Kaguya ate the fruit, and then in response to the Divine Tree losing its fruit, it turned into the Ten Tails and went on a rampage, and then Hagurama sealed that. So the alternative would be, this is just a slight twist in what actually happened. It's Kaguya ate the fruit, and then at some point, she just went mad and turned into a monster. Basically, Madara's story would be she lost control of that power and became that monster, and then Hagurama stopped it. Whereas the truth would be she chose to do that. But if it was just said Kaguya became the Ten Tails, different reasoning, but it said that. Would that help for you? Do nothing? Would it be the solution, or only slightly help?
I think if Kaguya's name, bits of Kaguya's name and lore were brought up with some of the stuff that we were told before, such as when Toby was explaining the Ten Tails about how this was a monster, it appeared that when this princess, in an attempt to try and unite all the people, ate this Mitzi fruit, and while she made peace for a time, she turned into a monster that caused havoc. And as a result, the Sage of Six Paths had to step in and save the world. I think if you sort of reference that could at least be an idea for okay, there's this other figure besides the Sage of Six Paths that was mentioned, and you could all right, she's being built up, and you could even do some more, like I said, subtle hints, like the Kaguya clan based off of a war goddess.
Well,
you could even, I guess, maybe even have some stuff with Jashin, with Hidan and Kakazu, I guess. Arc, if you will, where Jashin would be one of the gods that, that people thought was Kaguya or something. Or at least, like, the war goddess.
But conception of Kaguya became Jashin type thing.
Yeah, all that. If you could have done, like, all these subtle connections, or these subtle hints, if you will, and it's like, oh, turns out it's all connected to this thing. I think it could have worked because, okay, in One Piece, the manga right now,
Emu, I think, was set up way better than Kaguya ever was.
Yeah. Let's see, there's an arc back in the pre-time skip that mentioned all these gods, maybe like once or something. But now in this current arc, we are getting an idea of what these gods... Okay, these gods actually exist. Or at least the powers of these gods exist via the devil fruits, if you will. And it seems like these gods are going to play these god fruits, if you will, are going to play a part in, like, the final conflict.
So I do have a funny realization. I think a lot of the complaints for Kaguya, actually, now that I think about them, they apply to Madara. He's introduced in the final arc, not at the beginning of the arc. He replaces the other villains that have been built up throughout the whole series, like the Masked Man.
Well, because we thought Toby was Madara, and then he was like, "Oh, no, that's not."
Yeah.
This happened midway in the arc. It wasn't right at the end, I think.
Yeah, that's also
enough things to, like, establish with Madara.
There were hints that Toby wasn't Madara because, like, Kabuto was like talking about Madara, so Madara wasn't right in front of him, and Toby's like, "Don't push it."
Yeah.
They're also calling him Kabuto, and Zetsu in particular has been foreign. Consistently call him Toby and not Madara.
Yeah, so there was, like, sort of, like, hints that were such foreshadowing this twist. Arguably, there's a lot more hints than whatever was the Kaguya twist, so...
Yeah, okay.
And like I said, and like I think both me and Greg said at the beginning, we think Kaguya is just was introduced to do a spin-off for, like, Boruto.
Yeah, well, like, going back to that, Boruto, they had the plan for that one in 2013, I believe.
Yeah.
Well, actually, real about that, everyone loves to say that Kaguya was written for the Boruto story, and I totally understand why they're saying that. But just to make it clear, is that based on a thing Kishimoto directly said, or is that based on a assumption that you're making based on different factors? Before I say my next thing, like, did Kishimoto say that, or is that a common popular assumption made?
Yeah.
Well, do you know? Are you saying it because you know Kishimoto said it, or are you saying it because you're
What? I can't.
I think you said it too fast for him, Kamui.
Okay. So the Kishimoto made Kaguya for the Boruto story. That statement. Did Kishimoto say that? Or are you assuming that?
Well, I seem to remember there was an interview, like, where Kishimoto admitted that Kaguya was pretty last minute.
Well, that's different. That would be a different thing, though.
Yeah.
Was it for Boruto, or is that an assumption?
It's largely an assumption. I assume it's an assumption. I'm just making an assumption because you know, like, they had the idea for Boruto, 2013, like we said, and you know, the planning for it, like, they started making the last in 2012, I believe.
Well, it was actually, if you don't know, it was at the last like, filming for the first time, when it was, like, private openings in theaters or whatever. When Kishimoto was going to the first opening, the producers came up to Kishimoto at the Naruto last movie, and they told him to make the Boruto movie. So that's when that started, technically.
Yeah, which is pretty funny to me, because it's like, wow, so the Boruto movie wasn't his idea or intention.
Exactly, yeah.
They didn't want to do it, they made him.
Which can, if anything, that could play into it to where, okay, you could blame it on corporate meddling rather than Kishimoto's original intention.
Well, I suspect a lot of corporate meddling went into Naruto towards the end.
Yeah.
I feel like they wanted, like, to continue the franchise, so they wanted a character they could create to loosely connect to the movies they were going to do to like build up to like creating the Boruto franchise, because let's see, they created the last to create a love story so that Naruto and Hinata to get together so they could have Boruto.
All this corporate interference, it kind of reminds me of what happened with the Pokemon anime with Takashi Shudo.
Yeah. And yeah, we'll get to that bit for a minute. And then they had, like, of course, the Boruto movie created so that they could potentially build off of a spin-off sequel series when introducing everyone to, like, the character Boruto properly, if you will, because...
Well, here's what a thing I remember. Well, wasn't the last at one point going to be a Naruto Part 3 or something? But that was the intention originally?
Kishimoto said that it officially takes place between chapters 699 and 700. So that's like what we have on that officially from Kishimoto.
Yeah. But I mean, I think the last was an early plan for a Part 3 or something.
I don't recall that, but maybe.
I don't know.
I think he said that at Jump Festa shortly after Naruto ended. I remember reading that, but I don't know if I can find that.
Okay.
My point with the whole thing is, though, well, I totally understand why the assumption about it's Kaguya's made for Boruto is there. I'm not gonna say it doesn't make sense, but I do think it's worth noting at least that besides the obvious that doesn't have to be true, it's for a more narratively focused thing. Kaguya, okay, so in the manga we don't know that she's alien or not, but she definitely feels less human than the others, both in her appearance, her abilities, and her personality. She's lacking humanity. She has traces of it, we see, like when she cries. But a big thing is, like, unlike the other characters we're facing, she, and especially Black Setsu, I mean, Minato straight up says that you're not human. They're not human. And I do think it's entirely reasonable that Kishimoto wanted a not human final villain for Naruto to do his Shinobi history theme with. That's entirely reasonable, and that would be separate, because that can be, like, obviously he can take advantage of it for Boruto with the future villains, but that doesn't mean that the concept of Kaguya was specifically for sequel villains, because that in of itself is like, well, okay, but like, you obviously wouldn't need alien villains for the sequel story. Case in point, look at the Boruto, even in the Boruto manga, they have Ao. He's not an alien. They have Amado, who's his technology. He's not an alien. So they can easily create villains without aliens. So I don't think that necessarily, for both reasons, both that Kishimoto might have wanted inhuman final villain, and also Boruto doesn't need alien villains for any reason whatsoever. Because Madara wasn't an alien. He was plenty strong, so wanted to just have a really strong future villain.
Part of that is...
It doesn't feel like that necessarily would have to be the case.
Part
just
of that...
Kishimoto used it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Part of that is also that Madara is a shinobi. He's a byproduct of the shinobi system. He's a victim of it. He was affected by it. Rather than someone like Kaguya, who's like an outsider of it and who influenced it. If anything, rather than being a victim, she like propagated it. In a way, she started it. So that's like a complete difference there.
Direct one, as he's claimed he started shinobi history. It's his story, basically.
Exactly.
Which you can't do with any random shinobi. I mean, we've proposed the rewrites to where, like, for example, if Madara and Hashirama are the founders of the Leaf Village, you can easily tweak it to where they weren't considered shinobi until the Leaf Village was founded and they were the founders. You can obviously write it differently, but that's not how it was written up until that point. The ninjas, the Warring States era, they're shinobi. They already long existed. You take any random shinobi, they can never be the founder, but you introduce something that predates shinobi, well, now they can be the origins that propagate the whole system in the first place.
Well,
so
yeah, I suppose you could, but the biggest problem,
and whether or not you like that is separate from, well, that can just be Kishimoto's intent, and that would have nothing to do with Boruto at that point.
That could be intent, but then arguably the execution would be extremely poor, because for most people it's like Kaguya came out of nowhere. Like Madara felt like more of like the villain that we were building up to. And like he's been like behind all the current conflicts and strife in the ninja world, rather than
really though. Like, to be fair, like, you can say that, but at the same time, 99, like, for example, the Akatsuki, people need to stop saying Madara's an Akatsuki. He had nothing to do with the Akatsuki. He didn't tell Obito or Nagato to do that. That's not his idea. All the Akatsuki's actions That's the Akatsuki. Obito just attacking the Leaf Village, that's not Madara. That's Obito. All the Obito in the Blood Mist Village, that's just Obito. That's not Madara. Obito trolling people and stuff. Like, all these random things Obito's doing, aside from manipulating Nagato and trying to collect Tail Beast, that's not Madara. That's just Obito's doing. And to give Madara credit for that, I don't care if Obito pretends to be Madara. He's still, well, first of all, half the time he's pretending to be Toby, but ignoring that, it's still not Madara. Like, he didn't do that. It wasn't his idea. That's all Obito, and I think you should give credit to Obito. And if you're going to say it's Madara, then you're going to say that, okay, well, Madara's just stealing the limelight from Obito, who did all the work. And then you could just say the same thing with Zetsu, because if that's good for Madara, then it's good for Zetsu, because he was manipulating it the whole time, too. Which is what Oodie meant by, you can make a lot of the same arguments for Madara as people do with Kaguya. Because if it's good for Madara to manipulate everyone, well, then it should be good for Zetsu to manipulate everyone. If it's not good for Zetsu to do it, then you shouldn't be happy when Madara did it. It's the same thing.
Do you want to respond to that first, Greg, or do you want me to?
Why don't you go first?
Okay. Well, okay, because that was a lot. See, so,
well, and I want to clarify. You could say maybe Madara's manipulation's better executed than Zetsu's with Madara. And that's fine. It's a separate argument. I'm focusing on the idea first here. Because, again, people just say, oh, Black Zetsu did this, rather than, well, how, for example, I know I'm giving you arguments for you, so don't use these, but, I'll be the first to tell you, however the hell Black Zetsu came out of the ground to take over White Zetsu, but also came out of Madara. It doesn't make any sense. How Zetsu faked being created by Madara, the way it's written, doesn't make sense. I'll be the first to tell you that, but that's separate from the fact that he did that. That's so if you're just going to complain about that, I'm okay, but that's not what people are complaining about. That's what I'm complaining about.
Okay, arguably, perhaps to the origin of Zetsu, not necessarily the best, but yes, most of the actions are done from Obito, if you will, but arguably, at least with Obito, he's sort of the apprentice to Madara, and while yes, arguably, perhaps Obito did some methods that perhaps maybe Madara would not have done, or to get the achievement where he was, because his goal was to be fully revived and all that stuff. But at the very least, Obito is an extension, at this time is acting as an extension of Madara's will, if you will. Maybe not in the way he would.
So here's my real quick, Kamui, because I'm the best person in the world to address this. So you're not wrong. Obito's doing the evil, dark, evil Obito stuff because Madara made him evil and dark. Except that's not actually true, because Kid Obito, he may not have awakened his evilness in the most direct, obvious, aware way yet, but Obito, just like Kid Naruto, realized the flaws with the shinobi world and wanted to change that, even if he had to do it in a radical way. That's what he's telling Kakashi when he's going to go save Rin. He's going to change the world.
And also, this is separate from that, but if you're going to say Obito's acting according to Madara as well, but you realize the obvious problem here. Madara's acting according to Zetsu's will. It's the same thing.
So what I want to do is, this is giving Obito credit, because Madara's pushing Obito to do something he wanted to do deep down anyways.
But he wasn't, basically it's Obito wanted to do it, but he hadn't yet become comfortable with actually doing it, and Madara is basically getting him to the point where he will do it. He wants to do it, but isn't doing it, now he is doing it.
Exactly. It's because he has Rin, so he can be happy living that naive life, basically pretending like it doesn't exist, even if it bothers him deep down. As soon as he loses Rin, he doesn't have that.
Rin was his sole light in the world from Obito's perspective. He says this when he's on the ground, reaching his hand in the sky towards him and talking to Kakashi. Rin's the only light in this world, but because Rin is there, he has light, so he doesn't need to do this other path. But the moment he loses Rin, now from his perspective, he's lost all light. There's nothing left. It is just hell.
Keep in mind, exactly. The sole light in this pitch black hell. Madara didn't make this world hell. The world was always hell. It was already hell before Rin's death. It's just that Rin was the sole light in the hell.
And obviously, Naruto and Kakashi, they get Obito to like believe / understand, however you want to word it, that there's more good things in this world. Like, for example, Kakashi's friendship, Minato's friendship. These are things that Obito can see as good life things to be happy about.
But Kid Obito doesn't believe that. He hasn't been convinced by Kakashi and Naruto yet.
Exactly. But like the point is, like, obviously Obito hasn't changed it, but from the perspective of basically up until he loses, Obito's taking that framework that it's just all bad other than Ren. Once Ren's gone, it's only bad.
Exactly.
And Madara's just taking away Ren. He's taking away the only good thing that was preventing Obito from being Madara, basically, in a sense.
Greg, do you want to respond to this, or?
Well, I think those are fair points. My issue with I think my issue with all this, what I wanted to say was, like, Obito, I think when you established that he was the guy who started that the Nine Tails event at the beginning of the series they talked about, when you establish him as the guy who did that, I don't think anybody else can be the final villain after that.
Yeah, that's like the beginning of episode 1, so I can see that.
I'm gonna be honest with you, I've actually done. We could probably find it after I'm done doing my app work out here, and I can use my computer. But I actually discussed a topic about Obito being the final villain and stuff in basically the similar topic, because to some extent you could definitely argue Obito deserves to be the final villain, meaning Madara is either going to be like a side thing, or he gets dealt with first, or he just doesn't actually exist, or whatever you want to do there. And obviously Kaguya would as well at that point. But you could definitely make that argument. But then that's no longer the Madara should be the final villain instead of Kaguya. That's more like a neither Madara nor Kaguya should be there, which is a separate argument.
I would say this one case for making Madara the final villain over Obito is that if you're going to have Obito the redemption arc, if you will, is that Madara being the one that manipulated him is now then he needs to be the one that they need to defeat. Partly for like Obito's redemption, also partly because Naruto defeats the villain that caused that sort of like led to the one that ruined his life, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Greg from a perspective here, because the very first thing we get from the entire franchise is, Naruto has the Nine Tails inside of him, which has ruined his life because the Nine Tails invaded the village when he was born and the fourth Hokage stole him inside. And we don't know that the fourth Hokage is his parent at this point, but regardless, the Hokage is his goal, and in particular, the fourth Hokage is the one that Naruto's like reaching his hand up to be like, and all these things.
And there's also the Obito Hokage narratives of what it means to be Hokage there. So having that be like the final thematic, like even with Sasuke, through the Itachi's words versus actions, they're still doing Hokage stuff. So having it finished with Hokage there works really well.
Let's see. The one thing I can say is perhaps maybe if you wanted to like let's see, make Obito the final villain, sort of like having Naruto and Sasuke fighting him, and you could have also had some other people fighting Madara at the same time. The best thing I can think of is maybe some of the Kahona 11 and some of the ninjas that are going to become the future Kage. Let's see, fight like Madara. Maybe like have like the next generation defeating Madara, which the Kage failed to do. For example, for this one, you have Sakura having a role of like defeating the ninja that nearly killed her master or something, if you will.
Well, honestly, what I'm thinking, because I mean, there's different ways you can approach it, but if Madara's not going to be like a post-Obito villain, like Obito's going to be the true big bad final villain here, I think to some extent, I just wouldn't have Madara and Obito actually be connected. Like, Obito can use his name just for the like legends, and we'll get to Madara in a minute, but like, Madara's not part of Infinite Tsukuyomi in this case. I think might work best. Like, he's his own guy. He's separate from Obito, and in this case, what you might want to do, so I think 5 Kage versus Madara is still a very good idea here. In this case, I'd actually just have them win. But basically, Madara can be like in a way, he could he can almost take Black Setsu's place in a way, not from the manipulation, but something Madara does. So Madara is like, whatever his bad guy goals are, the stuff with Hashirama, he can essentially kickstart a cycle of like bad history with the ninja world. Like whatever it is that he does or is trying to do, like he's like the origins of a lot of the shinobi system's problems, and the five Kage are gonna like basically put an end to it as they ban maybe like Madara hypothetically is, I'm making up hypotheticals on the flyer, but let's just say Hashirama gets the five Kage into an alliance before the Madara fight. Madara somehow disrupts that alliance and sows the seeds for conflict, whatever the reasons are. I don't care for the moment, but he's the reason that happens. And now they're going to join together to defeat Madara, who is the big bad from the past. So they're doing the shinobi now versus the shinobi of the past, the beginnings. And they're going to probably win in this case. Like, they're just going to beat Madara. And then obviously Itachi and Sasuke can still have Kabuto. And then you have the masked man. They're going to break Obito's mask. And from that point on, it's just Obito. You could just do it that way. Thoughts?
I'm saying the five Kage defeat Madara while...
Yeah, in this case, the five Kage will just straight up...
Yeah, I think Madara should have killed one Kage. I'm not sure which one, but he should have killed...
I mean, you can even have it to where Itachi undoing the Edo Tensei is what really beats Madara, but they stall it for long enough. However you want to do it, the point is, like, they get the victory, would be the idea.
The only thing I would say that you need to work on is how Obito became Kobe/Madara.
Oh, just do the same thing. It just wasn't manipulation. Just like the Mist Village genuinely did what they did with Ren.
Uh-huh.
And just have Obito make up the infinite Tsukuyomi concept. He's got Itachi. Like, I mean, honestly, I've joked about this for a long time, but like Obito just making up infinite, because Itachi's Genjutsu is to manipulate space and time, create his own world. In the novels, he's literally doing this for Izumi, giving her a perfect life before she dies. Just have Obito basically say, I'm going to do that to the whole world. Basically, I know he doesn't have Tsukuyomi, so he's going to make his own Super Genjutsu, is the idea.
How would you explain him surviving?
Surviving the Mist Village thing?
No, surviving the Gaiden earthquake.
How the fuck he survived in the first place? I mean, I understand Zetsu pulled him out of the boulder, but like, how did Obito survive that? Just write it differently. I don't know. Just
oh my god.
I can see your idea, but clearly needs a bit of work, if you will. Anyway,
I was going to make it perfect. Yes, I would address that. But to be fair, it's not. I'm not going to say it's addressed well in the first place. Because there's the whole, well, maybe Obito awakened Kamui and slipped through the boulders, even though he didn't awaken his Malgekyo yet, or Kamui, and he didn't actually do that, and it's just metaphor. But at the same time, if he didn't do that, how the hell is he alive? Why is he crying? I mean, I can just go on and on with endless questions of why it doesn't make any sense, but it doesn't make sense anyway, so we can't really blame it on the rewrite at that point.
Okay, I'm just going to address one comment from Space saying, even if Kaguya did have proper build-out, fans would still dislike it. I'll say one thing to that. Well, okay, arguably, yes, probably Madara will always be preferred over Kaguya. But I would say if there was more proper development and build-up towards Kaguya, I think there'll be a lot less complaints about, okay, this feels like a last-minute spin-off. This feels like this was shoehorned in.
But I think part of it, and this is genuinely true, I mean, most people prefer Madara over Kaguya, and it's just for more than one reason, but there's the simple fact that, like, I mean, Madara's got that spunk in him. He's got a good personality. He's got good motivations. He's got a really good history. He has a cool design. He's got cool abilities, cool way of talking to people. He's got that smug attitude. And it's like, well, if you're going to just give Kaguya all that, so then she's a carbon copy of Madara, you don't want to just copy Madara, obviously. But then it's kind of like, and I'm not, obviously Kishimoto's created tons of amazing characters all throughout, but there's a certain extent of like, she's not going to be Madara. And yes, hypothetically, he could have just come up with this, I don't know, really cool attituded character that we really like the personality of. But they're probably just going to say like, well, it's not Madara. Like, is it better? Like, because if you just to some extent, it's like, if you randomly shoehorn in the best character of all time like that, they might still say the same things. I don't know. But I do think to some extent, Kishimoto doesn't want to repeat Madara. He wants to do a different type of character. And it's just like, well, they're not going to, it's going to be hard to be better than Madara because Madara was a really good high bar, you know? And that's always going to be true regardless of any other narrative intents.
Yeah, I'll definitely say yes, arguably it's hard to beat Madara, but I think, like I said, if you had more build-up, there'd be a lot less complaint, oh, this feels like it came out of nowhere.
I think honestly for me, I think it's less the build up. It's more because again, this is why I said Black Statue is really the villain. If Kaguya did more of the talking, that alone might make a big difference. Like if she was the one just talking to Naruto, arguing about this and that, the shinobi history, I agree, blah, blah, blah. If she was doing more of the talking and passionately doing so, I think that would be more the thing, whereas it's Kaguya's character was divided into herself and Black Zetsu, essentially. I do think that's a lot of it, because people like to separate Kaguya from Black Zetsu because they're technically two different entities, even though it's Kaguya's will, but it's got a male voice, a different personality, and so on, and that's why they separate them. But it's like you almost have to view them together to truly, embrace it as like one character. That's really what they are, even though they're not, but they are.
Yeah. Well, it also doesn't help that they don't have much time to converse with each other. I mean, there's like Zetsu gives like Kaguya maybe 1 or 2 warnings throughout the fight. Arguably, it feels like if you're going to introduce this new character, you can't just do 1 volume and be done with it. It's like
it's pretty short overall. Yeah, that's part of it. Kishimoto used that fight more as a dumping ground for all of his cool ideas that he didn't have anywhere else to put.
Yeah, and it's obviously the elephant in the room. Kishimoto was kind of like forced to end the story faster at 700. There's a good chance that Kishimoto, chapter 670, well, whatever they told him to do it, wasn't planning on ending quite that quickly, but then he had to. And he's like, well, shoot, I want to do all this now, so I'm going to make it happen, but then
I'm just going to cram it in. Yeah, nothing goes wasted. Exactly.
Were you about to say something, Greg? Sorry?
I said the end was announced with Naruto and Sasuke just started the fight, and there's announced, we got 5 weeks left.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so I would probably say, okay, probably yes, they probably also rushed them, but I'd definitely say, okay, you have all these ideas and concepts. It feels like you're best not leaving them out and maybe using them for something else, like your next work, because you're adding all this new stuff last minute, and it feels... And even if it's like you had this in your head for a long time, it just feels too new and with too little time because, like I said, Kaguya feels like it should have been like an antagonist that needs an entire arc, not just 1 volume. And I think one thing I wanted to say, I remember you talking about, Kaguya being the concept of the evil behind the shinobi world. Perhaps maybe if that history was brought up a bit and say okay, Kaguya was a tyrant that ruled the world. The Sage of 6 Paths was arguably the first ninja that divided, the first one to defy her, if you will.
Well, shout out Kamui's treadmill.
Yeah. That's not treadmill. That's my dad hammering some stuff.
I feel like if there was at least some established law that before Shinobi there was these tyrants, maybe you could say the Yasutsuki clan that ruled over the world, and one of their members, the Sage of 6 Paths, betrayed them. Then you could have made me more do the concept of the Yasutsuki would be a bit more accepted rather than they're just space aliens.
I do think to an extent, one of the arguments, especially that Kamui was saying, is that people say they prefer Madara as the final villain over Kaguya, and a lot of people do mean that, but I think at the heart of it, what a lot of people also really mean is that they just prefer Madara as a character in general over Kaguya. For example, I like Kimimaro more than I like Madara, but does Kimimaro work as a better final villain than Madara? Not necessarily. So for me, I think a lot of this comes down to Kaguya as a final villain doesn't take away from Madara, at least in my opinion. Madara's story finished with the Infinite Tsukiyomi.
Yeah.
And everything that Kaguya does is in addition.
With Hashirama, but in terms of his villainy story,
because it's not
he did his final act.
It's not replacing anything that Madara would have done. They wouldn't have argued about the same things they argued with Madara about. Madara had his story fully fleshed out. He had his full ending. Everything with Kaguya is extra and in addition to the story. I agree. I like Madara more than I like Kaguya. But does that mean that Kaguya works less as a final villain? Not necessarily. I can understand why people would say that anyways, because again, I like Madara more as a character regardless, but Kaguya, despite being a worse character, doesn't take away from Madara's character.
In
and
some ways, yes.
Character can be more fitting as a final villain. Even if she's a worse character, she can be the more fitting final villain.
I'll probably say this. I feel like some people might not believe Kaguya was a last-minute spin-off if it wasn't for the fact that immediately after Naruto's ended, you get all the spin-off novels, these movies coming out, rather than like a time period. For example, let's see, Avatar: The Legend of Aang. It ended, and no one expected a sequel, and then some period of time happened, and then 5 years later, The Legend of Korra happened. No one thought that.
Well, no, it wasn't 5 years later. It was like within the same year, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, a couple months later to memory, anyways. But I will say, then you have the Legend of Aang movie that just came out. I see what you're saying, but at the same time, people...
it's not officially out yet. It's just it's
out to everyone in the world who knows what they're doing. But I want to say that people were going to complain no matter what. They were going to complain anyways. People are still saying the only reason they made the Legend of Aang movie is because it's their cash cow. They're greedy corporations who just want money, and there's no soul in the movie, blah, blah, blah. It's for the investors or whatever. They're going to say that no matter what, that it's just for money.
Yeah, but
what I was going to say was we got to wrap this up soon because I got to go to dinner soon. So
yeah, that's fair.
Well, I would say arguably yes. There will always be some people saying, "Oh, you're just doing this for money." But I feel like if it wasn't like immediately happening after Naruto ended, I think there'd be a lot less arguments saying, "Oh, Kaguya was this last-minute idea that came in, and then just to create all these Boruto spin-offs and all that stuff." If it's like Naruto ended in 2014, and then 5 years, maybe say at least, nothing came out except maybe like the occasional spin-off book or something like that. But then the next major Naruto project was announced. I think you'd have a lot less criticism of that. Kaguya was just shoehorned in just to create a spin-off / sequel.
I mean, to be fair, Kaguya isn't necessary for anything in Boruto. You can still have Kinshiki, Momoshiki invade. They can still be Otsutsuki. You don't need Kaguya for that. Similarly, Kaguya's like name-dropped like 2, maybe 3 times in the Boruto manga. She's like the most unimportant character of all time. It's more about Kara and everything there. And freaking Ao, obviously nothing Kaguya related. So like to an extent.
Arguably, yes, but Kaguya is arguably the connection people are having with these groups with what happened.
No, but again, though, like hypothetically, they could have just written it to where Momoshiki and Kinshiki, they planted that tree. They came to get it back just now, like, and Kaguya is just some random human who ate it or what, it doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
Like, they could just write it that way. Like, Kaguya is not necessary for any of that.
Well, I will say, I do agree with our perspective, but also I see BlueStar's perspective because it's the same thing. Like Kishimoto is saying that he killed Neji because he's playing Cupid for Hinata and Naruto, even though there's zero romance in that scene. It's not about that at all. Nothing to do with Naruto and Hinata's relationship, which doesn't exist in the manga, by the way. That's only in the movies.
Exactly, and they also made Naruto laugh, so clearly he didn't do that.
Exactly, well, but he says he did, and he just did execute it like that.
Kishimoto said that once.
Like, we would never know that's what Kishimoto was trying to do if Kishimoto never said that, because that's not what the scene is doing.
Yeah, but then when somebody asked him, why did you kill Neji, and that was his answer.
Exactly.
Which makes no sense.
Exactly.
Then you have the next chapter of Naruto and Hinata holding hands, so you can see why people also had that assumption. Kishimoto then just confirmed it.
But that's not romance, is the thing.
A lot of fans interpreted that way. You should have seen how Nahina fans reacted to that scene.
No, I mean, it is a moment between them. That's undeniable. It's obviously has, like, romance elements, but they're not doing it for romance.
Exactly. Like, it wasn't just so they could hold hands. That's just something that happened in the scene.
Last time they actually interact in the manga.
Is that true? Oh my god, that makes it even crazier. It's technically not the last time there's like a connection between them, because when Naruto has the Nine Tails extracted, we see Hinata see that and run after him and pathetically trip over. And then obviously we see Hinata like thinking about Naruto and the infant Tsukiyomi and all that. But yeah, that's crazy. That is the last time they interact, isn't it?
Yes.
Technically, no, don't they technically have the scene together in the manga at Neji's funeral in the prologue?
Yeah, they don't say anything.
You're right. They're just together.
They're not really speaking.
Yeah.
Even no, but
Greg did say that earlier. I agree. The last chapters are pretty rushed. There was so many concepts they could have fleshed out. Again, like Naruto Hinata's relationship. They could have fleshed out so many things. Kakashi being the 6th Hokage. They could have made Naruto Hokage instead of making Boruto chapter 700. You could have seen Shikamaru with Mirai instead of like one panel. You could actually get something there. Onoki was talking about how the world was broken for so long and now he's finally seeing it heal. He's saying that to Naruto before Naruto's clone poofs away. We could see the world building, how that has changed over time. Same with what Gaara is saying with his speech at the beginning of the war, how the Akatsuki hurt all of the world and now we have to unite as one to come together as comrades and blah. They don't do any of that. You barely get like one scene of Kakashi saying, yeah, Sasuke was in jail, but he's good now. You don't get anything else there. We don't even know if the world knows about what happened between Naruto and Sasuke. Does the world know that they fought? Like, we don't know. We don't have any idea about anything about the ending there. We could have got so many things on, so many chapters. Just nothing. The last time we saw Killer Bee was like when the 8 Tails was extracted from him. And then he's just there at the infant Tsukiyomi. That might even be anime only. It's like something what you get the one scene of him in the prologue, fist bumping Naruto. That's it.
That he's just there.
Exactly. Like there's so many things that are just not present, especially in the manga, that they could have fleshed out. So I completely agree with Greg with that. Would definitely help.
Yeah, like I said, I think Naruto versus Sasuke should have been a bit longer than it actually was.
I completely agree with that. That's my biggest complaint.
Considering the part 1 fight flying.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, it feels like it should have been a volume at least, because, well, let's be honest, this is the fight you have built up throughout the entire series. You hyped it up, and arguably, it's the fight that everyone has been looking forward to. It's like the big fight that, for the longest period of time, people were wanting to see, hyped about. The only other fight I can think of that had that equal amount of hyper build-up, to some extent.
Sasuke versus Itachi.
Well, yeah, arguably that as well. But also, in just manga in general, would probably be Gojo versus Sukuna.
Yeah.
Those two are like titans. And,
I mean, the fact that practically everyone, says that Naruto versus Sasuke Part 1 final fight was better, that's a problem in my eyes.
Yeah, and arguably this might also be why some people also don't like Kaguya, because it's like, we wasted 10 chapters on this character that didn't amount to much, when we could have had wrapped up the Madara stuff and then go on to Naruto versus Sasuke. But it's like, let's see, it's like, arguably from what let's see, discussing with you two, and sometimes perhaps maybe a bit shouty, perhaps, but arguably there is some things that could have made Kaguya deep, but arguably with what we got, doesn't feel satisfying at all. Be it, let's see, Kaguya replacing Madara, or just Kaguya just generally having her time as a villain, if you will. None of it feels satisfying. And then afterwards, you have like Naruto versus Sasuke, the fight that everyone wanted to see. It's just, none of it just feels satisfying, and arguably Kaguya feels like the center of many people's issues that have been directed rather correctly or incorrectly, but nevertheless is still like arguably a problem that Kishimoto maybe could have fixed, but he either didn't, just because he didn't know how to, or because it was shoehorned in.
It depends at what point he realized chapter 700 needed to be the final chapter, because at that point he had to fit everything in there. He might just not have had time to write it, because he had to rush somewhere. Clearly there was a crunch, so he might have just had to write it that way, because otherwise something else would have been sacrificed.
But
what I was going to say is that I would say, without, especially the manga version, like the overall ending's rushed. Nobody's going to agree. How much it matters to you can vary, but it definitely is rushed. My thing would be, though, to pin it only on Kaguya might be unfair. Like, just to say if you remove Kaguya's chapters and give it to Naruto versus Sasuke, that could help there. But you could also say, well, if you remove Naruto versus Sasuke, that could help Kaguya. I wouldn't pin it on Kaguya. I would just pin it on the rush ending, and that's going to include Naruto. That's going to include Naruto versus Sasuke, and it's going to include Kaguya.
I want to add that this sounds ridiculous to say out loud, but most of the Kaguya fight isn't even focused on the Kaguya fight. It's focused on a lot of the other characters, such as Kakashi and Obito having their true resolution. It's focused on, like, Kakashi looking at Team 7 as a family. I love you guys! It's focusing on everything that isn't Kaguya, basically. Resolving so many other things.
I think that is also arguably why Kaguya also failed as a villain, because no one is emotionally attached to Kaguya. She's just more like this plain obstacle. If say murder was in there, there would be some investment, because this is the villain that throughout the war people wanted to see defeat, and it's like we're seeing all the stuff with Team 7 working together to defeat this one villain that we want to see beat. So
well, going back to it a little bit, it's interesting because Naruto has a line to Hagoromo after defeating Kaguya and being summoned back to Earth. Naruto says that Kaguya is the only person he's ever met, or I guess only entity, whatever, because Kaguya's not a human, the only one he's ever met who was truly heartless. Keep in mind, he fought Kakuzu. Well, so, remember, he saw Kaguya cry. It's, like, it's crazy that it's a weird line, but I could argue that it's actually a good and deliberate line, because it's showing almost like a hypocrisy in Naruto getting to, like, moderate is right reasons. But it's like, it's an interesting and cool line. I wonder what Kishimoto was thinking with that.
I don't know. In some ways,
to be fair, I don't think he was thinking about Kakuzu there, because he's like, all he saw from Kakuzu was monster form, no words. Like,
but again, like, it's you can say, okay, his intent is Kaguya's the only one that's literally not a human, so she's separate from Shinobi's system. You could say that, but at the same time, it's so in your face that isn't the case with Kaguya, as she's literally crying seeing her children inside Naruto and Sasuke.
In many ways, this is probably why maybe if you wanted to make a film monster villain, maybe just have Black Setsu just be the 10 tails, and like the only thing
I agree. I think that.
So what?
I agree with the idea of just having Black Setsu be the one character instead. But
well, especially that, Kamui, because like you were saying earlier, yes, Black Zetsu is a separate entity from Kaguya, different, blah blah. But you have to see them as the same. Black Zetsu loved Kaguya. That's not heartless at all. What happened to truly heartless with a Zetsu?
Yeah, so it's like, if you just make Zetsu his own entity, arguably, if you wanted to give him any emotions, it'd be just pure cruelty, just mocking, like, say, like when he mocked Obito's death, called humans foolish with their stupid dreams, mocking, I guess, Sasuke's clan as being a bunch of whiny bitches, if you will, but... You know, just it's the only emotions you could have with Zetsu. It's just like ones of cruelty, none of the compassion, none of the love, none of the sadness. If he has any emotions, it's just that of a monster mocking its victims.
So yeah, I do think because obviously, like, a lot of people like Naruto villains, where it's very emotionally resonant. It's a sad backstory that humans who went wrong, blah blah blah. But then it's not to say that, like, a heartless monster villain can't be a really good villain. I think for Zetsu, if she's going to be it, the best thing you can do is just give him spunk. Like, he's going to be talking that mad shit, and he's just going to be, like, dissing everyone. That's, like, what you're going to have to do.
The problem is, he's doing all of this for Kaguya, who he doesn't view as himself. He views as a mother who he loves, etc., etc. Especially in the anime. This is especially a problem in the anime, because the anime does show Kaguya love her children and love Tenji, and tell Tenji before eating the fruit that she does want peace and blah blah blah, and that's why she ran away and all these things. And then, like, you have even after the Hagoromo Hamura fight, Hamura saying, yeah, I viewed Kaguya's mind, and she was loving and scared, and all of these emotions that make us feel bad for Kaguya because she's a human character. You can't do all that and then have Naruto say she's truly heartless. Like, to me, that blatant hypocrisy is so clearly obvious in your face. I have to think that line is intentional to show a contradiction in Naruto rather than being some weird contradiction with Kaguya that the writers then consider.
It doesn't make any sense, the problem, for the story.
It makes sense for Naruto, depending on what you interpret Madara as.
Yeah.
Because I do think it's the same argument that Mello has of, oh, why is Naruto so bad in the Boruto era instead of the peak of human evolution? He's Jesus, why isn't he God in Boruto? It's because, well, this is exactly what I expected out of Naruto. This is what Madara told us was going to happen, basically. I'm glad that Naruto isn't perfect in Boruto. That proves my point with Madara. It only further substantiates it.
Well, arguably, that could be one thing you could argue with that, but I think for some people, Naruto's just too imperfect. It's like he feels like a character that's just failed at everything. Kind of like how some people do not like how Luke was portrayed because it feels like he failed at everything.
Yeah, I mean, Naruto thought he could do it, but he couldn't, and that's the point. That's what Madara was saying the whole time.
He was right. Yeah, he was kind of right in the end.
Yeah. But Greg, I do know that you said you were planning on leaving pretty soon, so
I'm talking for about 3 hours now. So
that's fair. If you wanted to wrap it up or give your final thoughts or resolution, or if you wanted to shout out your channel, I'll link that down in the description below, of course. If there's like a video in particular you want people to go watch from you as well.
I just uploaded a big hour-long Mortal Kombat video on what's going wrong with that. 1 second, got a phone call.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Okay, I'll definitely say, Oodie and Kamui, this conversation is interesting. I don't think we agreed with each other completely, though. I think you, like I said a bit earlier, I think you two have shown me there are some narrative and there is some thematic points where Kaguya could have worked, but I think from what I get, we kind of agreed, it's like feels like the execution Kishimoto did didn't make it feel like that was the case. Sorry, Greg, you were there? Greg, are you back?
Yeah, I gotta wrap up and I gotta run. Okay. Well, I think the problem is with Kaguya. Yeah. I mean, he was just very, Kishimoto couldn't decide who the final villain was going to be, and then it was like, this is what you settled on, and I think that's a big part of the backlash.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. But anyway, I gotta go eat, so I'll see you guys next time, whatever we decide to talk about.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. Thanks for doing this.
My channel, I just did a big Mortal Kombat video. What went wrong with that? It's like an hour long, so check that out if you're into that.
Nice. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for coming on. I'll see you.
Yeah.
Yep, see you.
Yep. I'd say for me, like I was saying, that's like I think you two have kind of given me an idea. Like, okay, I can see why some people like Kaguya feel like why she thematically works, but at least, yeah, I can see why some people think that way. But I do think, like I was discussing, I can see why she doesn't work, and it's that just the execution just did not feel satisfying enough, or feels like we needed more time with this character if you wanted to make it work. Granted, yes, maybe not everyone would have been happy, but at the very least there could have been argument cases that okay, this is a natural character to be added in the story rather than just one that was just shoehorned in.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, because for me, it's the idea that, first of all, Madara isn't trying to take credit for everything Obito did. Like, he'll admit, oh, technically, if you want to blame this fourth war on me, then I guess you can. But he's just saying the first through third wars happened naturally. Zetsu's going to say that he's the one that did. So I think the Shinobi history theme, that works as the final theme. Of all themes, that's the best final theme they could have done for Naruto, arguably. And I think that works better for Zetsu and Kaguya than it does for Madara to say. Because again, Madara, first of all, Shinobi history didn't start with the Leaf Village. Kid Hashirama says the Shinobi world is so messed up. Those problems were a thing before the foundation of the village system. The Warring States era was bad for a reason. That's why they started the villages. So it's not just there. They're already a byproduct of the Shinobi system, even though the villages weren't a thing. Like the Daimyo was already a thing. The 5 lands were already a thing. There just weren't villages in those lands. But the villages made the problem worse rather than starting it. Kaguya was there from the freaking beginning, though, with Zetsu, and Zetsu's thinking that he's manipulating all of Shinobi history, so I think that works for the Shinobi history theme as the last theme. But even, like, going off of that, we were planning on talking about this with Hot Boy before he rage quit before we even got into it. But this was what I was trying to do, is that it's not just the final theme being the best final theme. It's, like, the last, like, 3 to 4 themes, going all the way back to the 5 Kage Summit, penultimate arc of Naruto. It works in the order that it does for the final themes in sequential order. They play off of one another, leading into the Shinobi history theme in such a beautiful way, if you, like, take a minute to, like, think about it, or if we ever do that topic one of these days. But yeah.
And just for, like, I'm sure it wouldn't be too hard to find off the Google search. I don't remember the title of the video, but for anyone who's heard of, like, Nux Taku's channel, I know he does a lot of, like, he's more of a funny YouTuber than he is like a serious one. But I do remember, it's probably like a 5-year-old video, but he actually, ironically, did a serious video talking about the kind of the ending of Naruto with the like thematic things versus the superficial. Where with Kaguya's portion, he basically mentioned how thematically, he goes into detail with it, but like why she makes perfect sense, but superficially, why people don't like it. Which is she just shows up and she doesn't really talk much, blah, blah, blah. But thematically, she's like as on point as it can get for the ending of that story. Mm-hmm. So it's not this, like, there's reasons to say she's not perfect, but there's also reasons to say why she belongs, and more importantly, why she belongs as the final villain more so than Madara in many ways.
And I want to add to my previous point, which also plays off of what Kamui just said. Kishimoto isn't just picking themes out of a hat and be like, oh, Shinobi history, yeah, let's have that be the final theme in Naruto. There's a particular reason why he's having that in particular be this final theme, and there is a sequential order to these themes that are connecting the themes together, not just the arcs, but the themes themselves, to make one congruent message in a way for the finale of Naruto, looking like basically Pain Arc and onwards. I guess past Pain Arc, you really say it, since I haven't really looked before that. But it's not just like random theme after random theme, they're connecting the ideas in like a chronological, like a sequential order from arc to arc, rather than doing disconnected, separate ideas, if that makes sense. They're playing off of one another in like such a beautiful way, leading to the finale. You can tell from the 5 Kage Summit theme, this is like the beginning of, you can tell, that's the finale, especially working backwards. That you could see that's where it started with the themes. At the very least, that's where I looked at from last time. But that's what I would say.
Well, also because of the way they're kind of progressively going further and further back in history in ways, because, like, especially with part 2. Oh, well, if you could even say part 1, where you get the signing involved, but I'll focus on part 2. So, like, you've got, like, previous Kazekages with the third Kazekage. You know, we're going back in time. We're getting involvements with sorcery and things that happened in the past, mysteries of the past. But then after that Tenchi Bridge, I'll skip over because that's not really, well, I guess Danzo history with Leaf Village hits stuff. But more importantly, Kakuzu is as old as the first Hokage, actually technically older. So he's going way back. You've got Uchiha Massacre. That's a past thing. That's getting addressed with the next arc. Then in the Pain arc, Pain's talking about base. This is where it really starts to kick in with the Shinobi history stuff. Pain's addressing what these world wars that we've quote unquote heard about but don't know anything about. He's getting into like, yeah, this is what these wars were based on. This is why they existed, what they've done, and why this world is the way it is. And then in the next arc with Obito and his 5 Kage, well, first of all, just the 5 Kage coming together and all their conflict that's been history a thing. And then Obito's kind of getting back to the origins of things, also with the Pain arc Stage 6 Pass. But here, he's addressing the tale of the Stage 6 Pass and how everything began with the 10 tails of the Sage. And then we get further and further back into the origin. So they're progressively going back in time is basically the point there. Until eventually you get to Kaguya and Black Zetsu.
Yeah, though, like I said, even if that was the idea, it feels like I said, feels too late of a concept, and frankly does feel like a bit of a spin-off.
Well, not necessarily, because if they're progressively going further and further back in time, but it's a progression. So we'll just start with the Pain arc. You're going to the Second World War. We don't yet know about the First World War, but we're eventually going to get there. We're going further back in time. We get Hashirama and Madara before the villages even began. That's progression. and then we're getting the
before Kaguya, you get
Hagoromo.
You get Hagoromo and Indra and Ashura, and then you get Kaguya. No, but I do like that it just goes further and further back. I mean, Kaguya is literally described as the originator of chakra, she of the beginning, the mother of all things.
Exactly.
Well, she's maybe the originator of chakra, but you still have humans fighting each other before then.
Yeah. Well, that's not to say that chakra was the issue in the first place.
Well, but the point though is if you're going to be working further and further back in time until the very beginning, so that you can have the Shinobi history theme, well then where else can you? The time to introduce the beginning would be the end if that's what your progression's heading towards.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, it would make sense to finish with Kaguya.
It also gives respect to the entire series leading up to this point.
Well, yeah, arguably, yeah, but the thing is, Kaguya just feels too late of an addition to feel like she is the beginning of everything on this. I think if you, like I said, sadly hint towards her, they feel like, okay, you can make a more case, because
I don't think anyone's going to disagree that adding more build-up is bad. Like, I don't think anyone's going to say, oh, man, like, thank God they didn't add more build-up.
Well, Kamui, to be fair, I was saying earlier that, to an extent, the Kaguya thing is supposed to be a twist rather than a payoff that was built up.
Yeah, so what that basically means is because you're going to do a twist, what you need to do then is disguise your hints with things such as red herrings so that it isn't obvious and it can still be a twist.
Because in a way, less is more.
Yeah. So you don't want to overdo it, obviously, because you start doing so much shit that it's just blatantly obvious. Well, then it's blatantly obvious. It's not going to be a twist. So you have to not only not overdo it, but you need to disguise it with things such as red herrings.
Yeah, but I suppose one thing you could argue is that the twist feels so last minute. It feels more like a shock value than an actual natural progression of the story. The only thing I can probably say that another reason why I think people feel like Kaguya's a last minute thing is because suddenly the Byakugan, which was, let's be honest, did not remain important for the entirety of part 2, with the exception of the Kage Summit arc, where like a non-Hyuga used it to expose Danzo. Feels like, okay, why is this? Okay, when did the Byakugan suddenly become important again, and why is no Hyuga involved in this?
Well, see, I think that's a good thing. I'm not even
going to say it became important here. She has the Byakugan. It doesn't matter. She's not using it. The only thing she uses it is to determine who she's fighting at the beginning, and that's it. It's the Rene Sharingan that's important.
Well, technically, she used it to hit the Hawk's chakra points, Sazgazag, but those memorable things of all time.
She's not really using the Byakugan. She's not fighting with it. Whereas the Rene Sharingan is the important thing. That's the thing getting sealed by the Sekishibaku Tensei. That's the thing that's letting her do all of her Kaguya jutsu that we actually pay attention to. The Byakugan's just there because whatever. It's not important.
It's kind of cool because it shows pure eye of the Otsutsuki, whereas the Sharingan's the corrupted mutation or whatever. So it's kind of cool in that regard.
But it's not really important that that's the case, per se.
But I see it as a good thing rather than a bad thing. It's just because from the very beginning, it's the Hyuga, the Byakugan, is hyped up to be a rival to the Sharingan. If anything, I just blame Shippuden for making it less so.
The Sharingan derived from the Byakugan? Well, here you go.
Yeah, but Kishimoto loves to come back to concepts and make them relevant again. For example, Puppet Mastery. You get the peak of it at the beginning of Shippuden, showing, okay, cool. Everything beyond here is even higher than Puppet Mastery. It's even stronger than that, and that thing was strong. And then you get to Naruto the Last. You get an even higher version of Puppet Mastery brought back. They had to revamp it, basically. Kishimoto loves doing that with concepts.
Except the last wasn't really Kishimoto's idea.
Well, you get the idea.
Let's see, but anyway, I suppose we've gone long enough. Okay.
Yeah.
You've made I can see why you lot think there's thematic reasons for Kage existing, but which I can understand that, but I am still, like I said, I still think it was poorly executed. And with the timing and some of the stuff behind the scenes stuff, I can't help that. I think that Kaguya was just a last minute replacement for
the replacements were, well, okay, it can work, but see, for me, execution, I'm gonna be all for saying it's not perfect. It's not perfectly executed.
But saying replacement, depending on what you mean by that, if you want to say because Madara wasn't meant to be the final villain and she was just shoehorned in to be that final villain, I can get behind that better than saying she replaced Madara as the final villain, because based off all the thematic stuff and the narrative writing for Madara's character, I really don't think Madara was ever meant to be the final villain. Like,
because
it's
really almost
so.
like saying the Akatsuki replaced Orochimaru as the main villain from Part 1 to Shippuden.
Well, I'll definitely... Let's say, well, I think the difference between that is that the Akatsuki immediately replaced at the beginning of the series rather than at the end. Like,
they didn't really replace him in the first place.
Yeah.
Like, you had Orochimaru as the big bad for all of Part 2, and then suddenly he's replaced just last minute with the Akatsuki or something.
I mean, I think replace might just be semantically the word we're hung up on, because just a more extreme example, I don't think Orochimaru replaced Zabuza as the main villain of Naruto.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I wouldn't use replace. That's what the word I singled out for a reason.
Yeah, but I was trying to finish with like the point with Kaguya being like, feels like a last minute replacement that was just created to build potential spin-offs, which it does feel like that was the case.
I mean, to be fair,
see, that's the one I'm very again, like, it can be true, but it's like it doesn't really need, like, Kaguya's not needed to do that.
Well, I wanted to take
advantage of it doesn't mean that's what it's for.
I wanted to also say there's also a different frame of lens to look at that, because if that's a critique of Viz or whatever. That's an external critique that doesn't impact or shape the story in any way. So you can be mad at the company.
It doesn't make Kaguya worse, because even if that was truly the only reason they made her, but that doesn't really have any bearing on how she was written.
It doesn't impact the internal story.
Neji's, just as an example, Neji's death can be quote unquote for Naruto Hinata Cupid, but that doesn't change how it was executed. Like, because Kishimoto can do it for that reason, and it's just executed in a way that has nothing to do with that, which is basically how it is.
Because so even if it's written, Cupid, it's not. Even if Kaguya exists for the spin-offs or whatever, that doesn't change how Kaguya is written in the series.
Because hypothetically, I know this isn't true, but hypothetically, Madara is written for Boruto's Naruto Next Generations. Well, that wouldn't change how Madara was written to anyone. Even if that's actually Kishimoto says in an interview, yeah, I actually wrote Madara because I wanted him for the sequel manga. Well, that's not going to change how Madara is to anybody.
Yeah. Okay. Yes and no, because okay, well, there might be how technically how it was written. It's still arguably the intent, and frankly, it will no matter. You can argue okay, no, he was written like this for the story, but the intent was to eventually build off to this. That is going to affect people's perceptions.
Well, I think that affects people's perceptions of the author, which is totally valid. If you want to think Kishimoto or Shueisha or whoever Shonen Jump are bad people, bad companies, sure. That doesn't affect the Naruto story, because if you don't know, let's say it is true, let's say they confirmed it, they said it themselves. If you don't know that statement because you don't follow the authors, you just follow the story, then you don't know that. That doesn't change your feelings on Naruto.
Like, but for example, I didn't know Boruto existed for a few years. Like, I found out about it when I was rewatching all of Naruto when I was abroad in Spain during college, and I had gone through all of Naruto, and some way or another, I found out that Boruto was a thing. I don't remember how I found out. I think I found out through like Naruto Explained or Spikage's Tales or something. It was somehow I found out. So up until then, I just didn't know Boruto was a thing. And that means I can't have any influence. It wouldn't influence the Naruto story or Kage's character for me, because I'm only going to base it on the Naruto story, which is what it's written for, first and foremost.
Well, you might not have interpreted it that way, but I think it's clear that for a lot of other Naruto fans, they feel like this feels like spin-off baiting.
Maybe, but I think that's looking like outside in rather than just immersing yourself in the universe. Because again, you can't critique the Aang movie for its existence. Let's say, okay, sure, it is. The reason it exists is for money, but that doesn't change the movie.
I was gonna do this one example here. For example, in Star Wars: The Clone Wars, this animated show based on events between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, There's final season and all that stuff. Well, granted, is doing some episodes that were planned long ago that weren't. Among the episodes they brought back was like this group of clones called the Bad Batch, and even though many didn't know about sequels about those characters going to be announced afterwards, I did see some critics and viewers, particularly on YouTube, like Nostalgia Critic says, these characters feel like spin-off Ritzy, but these feels like they're building up to a spin-off with these characters. So I think that is what many people felt like when it came to Kaguya. This just feels like spin-off wage basing.
That's funny. Well, I do think, to be fair, it can have an impact. Let's say that the newest Star Wars movie is made solely for money by a soulless corporation who doesn't care, and they give it to a writer who has never seen Star Wars before, and they don't care about Star Wars, they're not a fan. You're probably not going to get a movie that's very passionately made for Star Wars fans and has the sole Star Wars identity incorporated into the writing. You're probably not going to get that. But that doesn't mean you can't have a competently good, well-written movie despite it being a cash grab if you just give it to the correct writer. Like, just because the producers are making it for money, that doesn't mean the team making it or writing it can't do it out of passion.
That's the problem then, because Boto's it's guarded by so many that let's see, that just further justifies people's opinions on what they think about Kaguya.
But I feel like that's unfair, though. It's I'm not gonna say it's not understandable, because I can see how if Boruto leaves a sour taste in your mouth, and it can, by extension, leave a sour taste in your Naruto mouth. But like, that's also being unfair, borderline ridiculous, because it has no bearing on what Kishimoto wrote. No matter what Ikimoto writes, Ikimoto can write the worst thing of all time, and I can understand how it maybe will make some people dislike the Naruto franchise more, but they're being ridiculous. It shouldn't impact how you feel about Naruto, because that's not Naruto. That's a separate thing.
You say that, but when The Force Awakens came out,
I'm gonna be honest with you. If that's the last of the 3 Disney movies, I thought it was awful, weirdest thing of all time. But like, it did not change how I feel about Revenge of the Sith, which is my favorite Star Wars movie.
Yeah, arguably, yeah, fair enough. But arguably, when The Force Awakens came out, majority liked it. And the next 2 films came out, and frankly,
Okay, so The Force Awakens the first one, sorry. I was thinking it was the last one. What's the last one? That's the one I was thinking was bad.
The Rise of Skywalker.
Okay, that's the one I think was bad, yeah. But that one was awful.
Well, yeah.
Well, I guess let me give a personal example, unless you had more to go with.
What I was trying to say is that, okay, people's perception of The Force Awakens became a lot more negative with the stuff that came after that to get at people's interpretations. Like, okay, I can see where things went wrong because this is what happened and all that stuff.
Okay, so
The Force Awakens setup.
So for my personal example, so in case you didn't know, I'm making my own anime. False Perfections. You go watch it now, free on YouTube. All of season 1. Oh my gosh, it's the best thing of all time. Go watch it right now. Okay, so selfless plug out of the way. So I'm making my own anime, but I'm not making it alone. I have a team. And obviously a lot of people on my team are great. They're recurring people. They're like almost like friends at this point. It's not just people that I like commission for money or whatever. But there are some people that are like that. They take one project, that's fine. So like, for example, some animators, I'll give them a scene. And they can't be passionate about the story about season 2, which isn't out yet, because they don't know the story. And I'm not telling them the full story. I'm telling them the minimum, because I really don't want to even spoil it, but I'm telling them what they need to know for the scene, so they can animate the scene. I have passion for the series. Obviously, I'm the most passionate person in the world about my own series. But the animators, obviously, I'm hiring animators based on how quality they are at animation and how good I think they would do at each particular scene. And sure, sometimes I'll give them creative liberties, freeway to whatever, to add their own creative spark if they can think of whatever, but they don't know like the further context of the wider story or overarching narrative or anything. They only know what I tell them, and that's by design. So inherently, there's going to be less passion about the story put into the animation. They can't do that, even if they wanted to. But that doesn't mean the animation is bad or soulless, because first of all, I care, even if they can't.
And they're only doing it for money.
But also, it doesn't matter if they care. I care. You know why I'm not animating it? Because I'm bad. You want to know why I pay animators who don't care? Because they're good. So my passion can be shown through their good animation, because I do the other parts of it. And it connects together in a cohesive way.
Well, I would say in response to that, okay, you're passionate, they're not, but they're able to do a good job, so the product worked out fine, but
exactly.
The biggest problem I say is if you're passionate and you didn't manage it properly and then you got something bad as a result of your poor mismanagement, you would still probably be blamed for the project going wrong.
I mean,
here's like an inverse note, because this could be more comparable to the actual Kaguya example. So now let's say Oodie used to write a story. So Oodie's going to be Viz in this case for the analogy, and the animator will be Kishimoto for this analogy. So let's just say Oodie, he once used to be passionate. He just lost his passion. Like, he doesn't want to do this. He doesn't want to do false perfections anymore. He's just like, I'm just not feeling it. But he's in his 5th season. And he's got to continue it because, he hasn't finished it. He feels like it. But then there's like this one animator. It's his #1 fan. They message him every day about how much false perfections changed their lives. And, like all the most amazing things of all time.
I get that all the time.
On the streets, and they became a billionaire. And they just love Oodie. They want to marry false perfections. They have a Michael poster ingrained into their pillows. Okay, you get the idea. Okay. So they're more passionate than Oodie ever was.
Oh my God.
And so Oodie's like, well, all right, I want to end this season. I got this animation here. Like, can you, passionate fan, can you animate this for me? And then they are the ones who are passionate, and they write the whole final episode for him with all their passion, and they have animation experience. It's like they're like a bad animator. In fact, they've been animating throughout the story. That's essentially what you're getting, because you're not going to say Kishimoto's not passionate, bro. Like, Naruto's his whole life. There's no way he's not passionate. Yeah. So Viz might not be. They were doing it for money, but Kishimoto's the animator here. It's his best friend. Naruto's his baby. He's passionate.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Some people don't actually believe that he was passionate towards the end. Some feel like he gave up on his story. He felt like he was burned out, and it feels like...
Well, he can be burned out, but that doesn't make him not passionate.
I mean, plus he could have taken a hiatus or quit or ended it earlier.
Arguably, some feel like he probably should have ended it a bit earlier, but also...
that's if anything, that proves the point. Kaguya exists. He could have ended it 20 chapters earlier if Madara was the final villain, and they just defeated him in a chapter after Infinite Tsukiyomi. The fact that Kishimoto extended it through Kaguya shows that he wanted to write that.
But not necessarily. It could still be like, we need you to create a character to tie into the last and the Boruto stuff. And voila, Kaguya.
I mean, they can say
fair,
that.
Though, he could have, first of all, can we have, and that's, again, as far as we're all aware, seemingly, that's just everyone's speculation, apparently. There's just no interview saying that they told him to make a character to tie into Naruto the Lad. But even if he did, he doesn't need to make a new character. Because, for example, Toneri is connected to Hamura. He doesn't need to write Kaguya as the final villain. All he needs to say is that Hagoromo had a brother. Frankly, he doesn't need to say Hagoromo had a brother. Toneri can just be Hagoromo's descendant and just misread the Uchiha Stone Tablet in the same way as the Hagoromo's decree. So it's not like Kaguya is required for that, because the characters have already been established that were needed.
Also, he's not working on Boruto, really. If you want to say he's done with the franchise, fine. I don't think there's any way they can write into his contract, you must write a character for the Boruto series. They can maybe write in the contract, you have to write 700 chapters, but I don't think that there's any way to force him to write what they want him to write necessarily. It's like, hypothetically, instead of Kaguya, instead of Naruto vs Sasuke, instead of Madara, they could have just like halfway through the war, just like Madara has a heart attack, and then the last 50 chapters is Naruto going to Ichiraku Ramen, and it's a gag manga. Kishimoto could have done that if he didn't care.
And also, like, again, when it comes to writing a villain for Boruto's story, I mean, he doesn't have to do anything because it's really on the Boruto story to connect it at that point, because
True.
He can just have Amado make a clone of Madara, connecting it back to Naruto for the Boruto movie. Like, he doesn't need to make a new, because frankly, if you look at the Naruto story, again, it's still a stretch to me, this thing, because Kaguya's not really connecting to the Otsutsuki, because in the Naruto story, we don't know she's an alien. We don't know all these things. They're not doing the silhouettes of Urashiki, Kinshiki, and Momoshiki like the anime did, because the anime's made way later. They're not doing any of that. It's the Kaguya's not connecting to anything in Boruto. It's Boruto going out of its way to connect back to Kaguya by having Momoshiki and Kinshiki say they know Kaguya, and the Kaguya is their best friend back in the day, basically.
That's true. It's working in reverse.
All you need to do is just write Momoshiki and Kinshiki and just have them say, "Oh yeah, we planted that tree back then. That's our tree. You messed it up. I'm gonna fix that." They don't need to be connected to Kaguya. It changes nothing. Now you have the Otsutsuki clan, and you connect it to the Divine Tree, ignoring Kaguya. So Kaguya isn't doing what people are saying she does. She's not actually doing that.
And just to further that point, the fact that Kamui didn't realize there was a sequel series tells you that it's conclusive enough that without external knowledge, Kamui thought it was over. That it concluded. There was nothing else.
Yeah, let's see, for we know, Kamui is the sole exception.
Sid is serious.
Not true. My brother didn't know either until I told him after I found out.
Okay, then
because you got to keep in mind, as a fan, when I was watching Naruto, I was on NaruSpot.tv watching Naruto. I wasn't on the Naruto forums or the Discord servers. That came way later. That's like, I wasn't doing that. I was just enjoying the series. And if I'm just enjoying, again, am I enjoying the series because I live in Japan and I'm examining the Japanese manga volumes? I just happen to know Naruto because, like, again, because everyone's got their own story of how they find out about Naruto. I found out about Naruto because of a video game my uncle had and gave to me randomly, coincidentally. I liked the game, found out Naruto was on demand on my TV. And then I watched the first season, which is Land of Waves, and I said, holy shit, I love this shit. And then I had to find out more. And again, I'm just watching the series. I don't know about these other things. I'm not part of the community. I'm just a fan.
Real quick, Kamui, imagine like how low-key, how much that changed your life erratically through the sheer coincidence of your uncle or whatever, Granda, of him having that game. Because like, think about how many hours we've done this podcast for in total. How many hours have been like, that's because of that moment.
Exactly, because I might have never gone into I mean, it's possible that somebody else would have mentioned it and I would have been interested, but there's a very reasonable chance I would have just been like, yeah, I don't care about anime. Like, whatever, it's not my thing. If I never got into this game first.
You would have never known me. You wouldn't have, like, 10 Christmas presents from me and Cam if not for your uncle.
Okay, alright, I'm just going to say this. Yes, let's see, Kaguya is usually the building block that people try to have all the Boruto stuff tied into, but the fact that she was created, she appeared there the way she did, does feel like, okay, they just put this new character here so that whatever we do later can tie into her to make it work with like Naruto's and Boruto's timeline.
But to be fair, I feel like that's a little bit more of a Kaguya was chosen to be the scapegoat because, like, again, compared to Madara and Obito, most people are going to say and Sasuke I'll include, most people are going to say Kaguya is their least favorite of those antagonists and villains, and understandably so. I would say she is the weakest of them, but because of that, she's going to be the scapegoat. They're not going to pick Obito as the scapegoat because he's not the one that they like the least. They like Kaguya the least, so they're going to blame her for a series called Boruto that they don't like, not because it's true, but because they want to point a finger somewhere and they chose Kaguya.
I feel like also to an extent, if you want to say that, you have to say that about the anime and not the manga, which apparently Kishimoto didn't have involvement in those episodes. But even if you want to say that, okay, then we have to look at the advertisement. Look at the... Oh, hang on. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say...
I'm wondering if that has to do with him having to go back to work, and he'll just say, I gotta go now, but we'll see.
Not yet. Okay, I'm good. Okay, so I think, continue my point. I think you have to look at the advertisement for the Boruto movie rather than the Boruto movie itself. Because again, the marketing would be the important thing here. And you look at the trailer for the Boruto movie. I don't even know if Kaguya is mentioned. If she is, it's maybe like once or twice. The rest of it is entirely about Boruto and Saruto wanting to be Hokage and the Chunin exams. And maybe they throw Mitsuki in there and then there's Naruto as Hokage.
There should be copyright on the trailer, right? With her.
Here, we can go look at it really quick. But, I mean, unless you guys disagree, I think the trailer would matter here a lot. Oh my god. Okay, what are letters? Okay, we're also not gonna like listen to it. We're just gonna like click through it.
But yeah, there's subtitles. That's all we need, really.
Yeah, so let me do that as well. Okay. So yeah, so it starts off not with Kaguya, but with Naruto and Hiruzen speech, there. By the way. You know, last gen stuff. Then we get Boruto. Oh, and they're also doing the versus the panda at the beginning. He's jumping through. Okay, Shadow Clone Jutsu. Naruto-san, make me your student. I want to defeat my dad. So this is what the movie's being advertised as. You got the Chunin exams. I'm the one who's going to be Hokage with Sarada, Mitsuki. And then we got the conflict. Boruto, Naruto, Himawari. Yeah, with the birthday. You got, okay, here's something.
Yeah, this is where we need to focus. What's going on
with look after him. I'm going to mute it. Just zoom in. So it's just explosions. We don't know the villain. We don't see them. Nothing Otsutsuki said. Yeah, it's just Sasuke fighting.
If they continue the scene or not. Or
no, it's gonna go to 10-10 and just watch it for it. I don't know why this is in the trailer. I'll be honest. I'm all saying. Okay, so make me your student. Blah blah blah. Oh, look at these. Oh, Naruto's able to do it. Okay, you get more explosions. Not a single shot of Otsutsuki here. What shot even is this?
We don't even know the context of this explosion.
Yeah, okay, this has to be Act 3. This has to be in the other dimension, which is hilarious.
It has to be X of the tree.
Yeah,
I don't think this never happens in the movie, though. Is this unused animation?
Thing here. I don't know. When is this? This doesn't exist, does it?
This is Killer Bee. This one here is Killer Bee.
This one's Killer Bee. Is it? Because... Yeah. I guess it is, because it looks like water, but it also looks like rocks and sand. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what the other one with Boruto in that tree is. Yeah. Like, where does that specific
Why are you so concerned with me?
frame come from?
Yeah.
What is this? What
probably
happened
somewhere
here? Boruto's getting hit. This did not happen.
Is this Sasuke? What's happening here?
Yeah, it looks like Himawari.
And then he disappeared. Oh, did you use a Meta Toshikara?
Keep going frame by frame here. Yeah, what's going on?
Okay, so
that looks like Sasuke.
He saves Boruto.
This did not happen.
Yeah, I don't remember that at all. Okay, bigger loser, Naruto. You did well. I'm your father. The fist bump. Okay, Otsutsuki. And he's already transformed here. And we don't even know it's an Otsutsuki.
We gotta see exactly what do they say.
Okay, finally a minute in. We got Otsutsuki. Don't you think you can escape from us?
You don't think you can escape from us, okay.
5 Kage. Author's best yet? Okay, that's crazy hilarious to put that in there.
Okay, that's hilarious. Also, real quick, I don't know if anyone does know, but usually data books come after, right? So was the Boruto movie data book done after the movie? Or was it like pre-released?
I don't remember. I just know that... Let's see, when the One Piece did its last film, One Piece Red, there came a data book out, which I think, came out around the same time or just before, revealing all this details about, the characters and also some stuff of the One Piece lore, if you will.
Oodie, real quick, you should also put them like intro pictures for like different people. So like, for example, for Daigo, be like, well, what do you think canonically is Kishimoto's best work? And then we'll put it's the Boruto movie, and then for other people like the Two Blue Vortex people, be like, "Oh, you think Two Blue Vortex is better? Well, but you haven't seen this."
This is so stupid.
I'm pretty certain if you had Daigo Knight here, he would still insist that Kaguya was just created to create a spin-off.
He absolutely would. But we've talked about Kaguya with it before, but we a lot of times try to not over harp on it because, a lot of people don't like Daringo, but Oodie and I we're friends with Daiko, so like we get along with him even if we don't agree on everything. So we try to talk about things that we think we can have a productive discussion on. Whereas I feel like Kaguya we can, but if we try to overdo it, that's obviously just going to be like running in circles. So
yeah, I feel like I'm just glad that you and Greg didn't get annoyed and angry with us. I feel like if we had this with Daigo, I don't see how we could even have the conversation.
Yeah, arguably fair though. Granted, and from what you described, hot and spicy would probably have rage quit.
Absolutely.
I will admit, I thought this conversation would have ended about an hour ago. To be honest.
Well, to be fair, you were wrapping it up an hour ago, and then we just didn't.
Yeah, you've dragged this on longer than I would have liked, but
I'm sorry.
I will say, well, yes, Kaguya might be the source of everyone's anger. I still think there is other reasons people hate the war. For example, while yes, Kaguya is the one that's targeted, but I will feel like Obito would have also been targeted if she did not exist, because how divisive Obito turned out to be at the time, because I remember the divide. Heck, I still sometimes hear some of the One Piece fans, that YouTubers that also were fans of Naruto at one point, mention how they found Obito to be a bad character.
Kamui, I'm putting this in NC Hammer. When did Boruto surpass Naruto?
In the Naruto movie, of course.
I'll just say this. Well, okay.
Well, did Naruto defeat Momoshiki?
Why you lot think Kishimoto? I'm repeating a dead horse here. Why Kishimoto thematically made Kaguya? Why you think he was still passionate about it and not did this to create a spin-off? I definitely say the execution, and not to mention from some of the other stuff I heard, such as let's see how, particularly when Kishimoto was talked on and on about how he heard how Sakura was hated, he sort of gave up on her.
Oh my god!
Even more.
I can't help but feel like there's other stuff that he probably gave up on his story that led to the mess with Kaguya, but that's fine. But arguably it was fun discussing this with you two, and I assume you're probably about ready to wrap this stream up as well.
In a minute, yeah. I did want to add, so obviously you have the shot of the Otsutsukis, but it's like one cut in the trailer, like 1 minute in. And they don't call them Otsutsukis. To be fair, I think Naruto fans know just based on the design. But
yeah, I mean,
they don't. But importantly, they don't reference Kaguya by name. They don't show her. There's nothing Kaguya in the trailer.
They're not trying to shove it in our faces that they're Otsutsuki. They're in fact shoving in our faces the other thematic things like the relationship with Naruto and Boruto, the bet about the times changing and things of that nature. That's what the trailer is trying to emphasize more so than. But we just see the villains and that they're strong here. That's about it.
Yeah,
exactly.
But the appearance does hint that okay, we're gonna delve more into this Otsutsuki stuff that with Kaguya introduced us to, at the very least.
Well, I mean, even that's arguable because again, you have like Sai, Orochimaru, white-skinned people. Then you have Kinkaku and Ginkaku with horns, so they're not necessarily even. Like,
okay, true, but let's see. But the Otsutskis, of course, have the Byakugan. Everyone else has.
Well, I'll add, we see fighting in the trailer. We don't see any fighting with the Otsutskis. There's nothing in the trailer implying Otsutskis fighting. Only other random fights or ambiguous fights.
I just Momoshiki saying you can't escape from us or whatever he says.
Yeah. That's fair. But yeah.
Well, anyway, I suppose it's fun talking with you guys and an interesting discussion, I say. I think neither of us have really changed each other's minds about Kaguya, but...
to be fair, that wasn't really the point anyways.
No. At the very least, we understand each other's perspectives.
Yeah. Which I think was really what the best we could have got out of this. which is good, because we did.
I'm pretty certain some people in your comments, or at least in your Discord, will think that I've been owned, but...
well, I could definitely disagree with that. If anything, they probably think the opposite, that we were owned, but...
Fair enough, but yeah. Well, anyway, it was nice chatting to you guys, and about 30 minutes away from my birthday. So,
oh, let's go! Happy almost birthday in 30 minutes! Yeah!
I'll definitely say, let's see, But yeah, I'll definitely say it's fun chatting to you. I'm not sure when our next Naruto discussion will be, but I suppose for others, I've got I'm giving you a hint of what I am going to do for my next Naruto discussion video. I'm going to basically talk about reasons why people hate the war arc.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. Let's see when I'll have that done, but I've got an idea of what I'm going to do with that one, but maybe some of the points that were brought up here will be done in this video, but it depends on who I get to join. But yeah. It was fun discussing Kaguya with you both, and arguably, hopefully, this will be probably when. Let's be honest, this won't be the last time we discuss Kaguya, but
yeah.
Let's see. I think we've got most of our Kaguya stuff put it out, unless I bring in some new friends, I guess. But who knows?
Yeah. Wow. Looks like that's the end of stream. Bye, everyone.
Yeah. Let's see. And do I need to do the outro of
Go for it?
Kimoto is greedy and forgetful.
Hey, I'll take that as the outro. All right, bye.
Yeah. That could be the new outro.